Tonight, the Trinity of Sin invents the dark multiverse, or at least a very stupid, stripped-down version of it. Swamp Thing defends his perfect record against the Justice League, this time fighting Wonder Woman, and Grant Morrison takes aim at Alan Moore and does his very best impression. Does it work? Hell if I know. All that and more tonight on the Not-So-New 52. Hello everyone and welcome to episode 168 of the Not-So-New 52. I am your host and I'm going to keep this goddamn brief. We have 16 comics to talk about. And normally I'd be like, oh, you know, that's bad, but not awful. I could talk a bit at the beginning, but one of those is Multiversity, PAX Americana. For anyone who doesn't know, PAX Americana, it is one of the densest books you will ever read in your goddamn life. Every panel, every word has like 15 meanings to it. And I have to try to do it justice in about 12 minutes, tops. So forgive me if I want to move through the rest of them a little bit quicker than normal. So, what do we have this week? As I already said, the PAX Americana, top of the list. But we also have, in no particular order, Batman and Robin, Batwoman, Harley Quinn, Red Hood and the Outlaws, Batman/Superman, Superman/Wonder Woman, Supergirl, Green Lantern New Guardians, Justice League, Wonder Woman, Teen Titans, Trinity of Sin, and our 3 weeklies, Batman Eternal, World's End, and Future's End. Out of that, the only thing I think is a big deal is the Green Lantern New Guardians. That is a Godhead tie-in. That is an event going on across the Green Lantern books. And yeah, everything else is just kind of continuing on its own little story arcs. Oh, there's also a new creative team on Wonder Woman. That is Meredith Finch and David Finch on art. So definitely worth checking out. If you were into the Azzarello stuff, it feels like it's going to be very different from that. So all in all, like I said, going to keep this brief. Let's just roll right on into Multiversity. Multiversity, PAX Americana, #1, written by Grant Morrison, art by Frank Quitely. This is so incredibly dense and so incredibly complicated. I will not be doing it justice in this review, but I will try to give you the best oversight as I possibly can. The first thing to note is this story is told backwards. So yeah, it's so dense. All right, so we open up with a actual literally told in reverse order of panels of the President of the United States getting assassinated. Very brutal, very gruesome. And we follow the bullet up into the sky as we see it was fired by a parachuting peacemaker. So then we cut around and Peacemaker is being interrogated, just like, all right, we've looked over the recordings, nothing makes sense. Why did you kill the president? So then we cut to after the assassination, which is there's now a new vice president who is apparently the father of Nightshade, who is a superhero in this world, part of the PAX Americana team. Or it might just be called PAX. And we see he's like, hey, look, because of what Peacemaker did, superheroes are over. Like, we cannot justify that image anymore. It's done. We're moving on and we're doing different things. We're moving forward onto something new. And she's trying to talk down her dad, who was the VP, now he's essentially president, just saying like, yeah, like, you know, there's other stuff. And he's just like, no, look, when the towers fell, everything changed. And he is straight up talking about 9/11. And he's like, now we've got our own little policy we're going to be doing here. And we're not going, when the towers fell, we put our hopes into children's dreams, all the superhero stuff. Now we're going to come at it like adults. So he's saying, yeah, the Peacemaker's in custody. We're trying to figure out. Captain Atom is still missing. We don't know what's happened to America's Supermen. As he gets in front of a press junket and says like, hey, I know you're all here to get my attention as new president. Trust me, I want you to take a leap of faith with me. Cut back to a little earlier, before the assassination. We show Question is being tracked down by Blue Beetle. Blue Beetle's like, dude, you are going crazy. You've got all this crazy stuff going on. Like, what happened to the Question I used to work with? And he's just like, oh, who killed Nora O'Rourke? What's Algorithm 8? All these things we need to find out. And Blue Beetle's like, dude, you got to be reasonable here. Come on. And Question calls him out, just saying like, "Oh, now you're working from within. Like, how much money did it cost you to make that beetle thing? You're absolutely working with the government, not looking against them." So he's saying like, "Oh, I made my peace with OSI and PAX." OSI, I think, was the original superhero team, but regardless. The question just calls him out, saying like, "Man, you've got like anxiety attacks, erectile dysfunction. You're pathetic." And he uses a giant magnet to grab hold of the beetle and allow him to make an escape. He then goes off into a subway and has to fight against Nightshade, and he just takes her out, like no problem whatsoever, just being like, "Oh, your masters in the military complex think they run the game, but who's the one who controls the board?" And he leaves behind a calling card with a question mark that has an 8 drawn on top of it. So the 8 and cycles and circles just keeps coming back over and over again. It literally does not stop. So also this book is told in 8-panel pages. Sometimes they bump it up though. So this one is told on 32 panels across 2 pages of Question breaking into Peacemaker's house, Nora O'Rourke, who is apparently Peacemaker's wife or girlfriend, and we get told through 3 or 4 different time periods everything that happens, but ultimately the long and short of it is Peacemaker says Algorithm 8 allows you to figure out what people are going to do before they do it. Someone knows how Algorithm 8 works. I believe it's actually the president knows how it works, and it's up to Nora, who's also a super genius, to figure out how it works as well. The second timeline is she has figured it out, but it's too late. It's after the assassination, and she is currently being attacked by someone in her own home. And she manages to get bashed over the head, but still struggle her way towards an elevator, but ultimately doesn't end up making it. And then we also see the timeline where Question is piecing this all together as he makes his way through the room. Then we cut to somewhere in the timeline, and Captain Atom, who is the Dr. Manhattan of this book, because by the way, did I not mention this is Watchmen? It's all Watchmen. It's all supposed to be Watchmen. It's all Watchmen the whole damn time. Captain Atom is reading the cursed comic book, the Ultra Comics, and he's saying, "I saw a Mobius strip in 8 dimensions on pages 12 and 13, and the scientists who are watching are just like, hey man, we're gonna commence particle acceleration and all this stuff." And ultimately, Captain Atom makes some very thinly veiled threats to him, saying like, "Oh, I see your origins and your secrets and the secret identities you hide from your loved ones." And he says like, "I can even read your thought balloons and I know what you're planning." And they execute a plan called Portabelly, which allows them to make a black hole inside of Captain Atom's head and seemingly kill him. And they say January 31st, 2015, Captain Atom has left the universe. But as they are quote-unquote celebrating, we see someone enters into the room. I believe it's Sergeant Steele, and he ends up killing all of the scientists and says, "Oh, the Big Bang is what comes at the end." We then go to Nightshade, who's visiting her mother. Her mother has some form of Alzheimer's or something and keeps on looping through the same conversational points over and over again. She ends up leaving her mom, saying like, "Oh, yeah, Dad, I'm with Mom, but like she needs help." She just keeps going round and round. The view is the same in both directions. It's really telling you to read this book backwards. So we then go back to Peacemaker and Nora, who are discussing all this stuff about Janus, who is a two-faced god who could see both in front of him and behind him. Apparently it was part of this movie that was like something in a backstory of someone else. Again, ridiculously dense, but regardless, this is where Peacemaker says, yes, you need to figure out Algorithm 8, and it should take like 2 years, and if it takes any longer than that, then ultimately, I'm going to have to go through this plan of the president, or and I don't, want to have to do that. So we then see Question is talking to some guy. He's a dirty cop on the payoff of the corrupt vice president, and he's pinned underneath some stuff, and Question's just like torturing him basically. And he's led a bunch of gasoline right next to some electrical cables. And he's like, "Oh, if the gasoline hits that, I'm done for." And he's just like, "Well, better answer the question." And he starts listing off this whole thing about there being an 8-stage color-coded system of the stages of developments of society. I don't have any idea, but regardless, he lays a gun down in front of this guy, basically saying, you can shoot me, you can shoot yourself, or you can answer the questions and hopefully maybe get out of this. And he answers the questions saying, like, yeah, we got rumors about killing Captain Atom. There's a secret formula. And Question just pulls out his phone, takes a picture of the guy, and then he bursts into flames because he was never going to save him to begin with. So then we cut to the opening of PAX, where OSI was this covert operation of superheroes. Now the government essentially is like, we're cashing all in on comic books. We're turning you guys from secret agents into comic book heroes, and you will have all of your names registered trademarks with the United States government. And you're going to be a team of PAX. And Blue Beetle's like, okay, all right, yeah, this is I'm okay with that. And everyone else seems to be all right with it as well, except for Question, who's like, hey, I'd rather the government didn't control my name. And the guy who's running it, who I think may actually end up being the president, is just like, well, hey, Question, are you in or are you out, man? Because you got to be all or nothing here. So we see this guy is opening up his like presidential speech. He's like, look, I promise you guys change. Here's what it is. And he introduces the PAX and all the different heroes. But then we also see he's doing this in front of where the two towers were, where the Twin Towers were. And Captain Atom is also on the team, and he has managed to make 3 towers, completely like ridiculously taller than the original 2 towers, and they are made out of like this shining glass and whatnot. And everyone's in awe, but some people are like reacting badly. And one guy is about to attack the president with a gun. He's immediately just teleported into jail. And we see Captain Atom is saying like, oh, did someone say something? I'm sorry, I'm in the future. Cut to the past, where the president is approaching Captain Atom for the first time about joining this team. And we see his childhood dog, Captain Atom's childhood dog, is there because they're like, oh, well, we thought maybe we'd bring him back into like his current mindset. That's the most we could think to do. This man is completely ununderstandable. We're doing our very best. And so he looks down at the dog and he's like, oh, hello. And he just rips his dog apart mentally, down like skin, muscle, blood, skeleton. And he's like, oh, I'm sorry, I was distracted. I looked inside. I was hoping I could see the pieces to explain the whole, but ultimately, like, I'm not seeing anything. And then he realizes, oh, I just killed my dog. Like, I love that dog. It was a faithful little dog. So he puts it back together. The dog is still dead, though. However, then a duplicate dog walks in, and he's like, well, maybe the dog could be alive and dead as well. And as he looks at the duplicate dog, he's like, it's not the same. I wonder why. So Governor Harley, not president, comes in just like, hey, Captain Atom, come on, let's have a talk real quick. And basically he walks him through the algorithm and he says, look, you see the world like I do. There's an algorithm. It lets you see everything. It lets you know all of everybody's actions. Nothing is a surprise anymore. And I've seen how we can get to a point of peace. Otherwise, we're going to go down to this Dark Ages, but I see exactly where we can do this great change for humanity. And ultimately what it ends up being is, I need to be killed. I need to become president. We need to kill the president, and then I need to be brought back. And that's the only way we're going to be able to do this. And that's because the vice president will be corrupt. He's going to do bad things, but then ultimately, like, he'll be put away and we'll be in a new light age because of that. So that's the ultimate plan. He also has a ring with the number 8 on it. It's signifying algorithm 8, but also infinity. And he's like, all right, so what do you say? And like, I've got a whole team planned out. You want to do that? And he's like, interesting. But he doesn't say yes, he doesn't say no, but we all know where it leads. So we then cut to a terrorist attack in the White House going after literally George W. Bush, and Governor Harley is in the back and he's like, oh, you terrorists made a bad mistake because I'm here now and I'm able to bring in my guy, my new superhero. And this seems to be the first one. It's Peacemaker. He jumps in over the walls. He's ready to go, and he takes out all the terrorists in one fell swoop, like no problem whatsoever. Basically convincing Bush superheroes are the way to go. Let's make this a whole thing. So we then cut back to the interrogation of Peacemaker, basically saying, hey, we've got drugs. We've got all these methods. We're going to do something to break you. It's only a matter of time. And he just spits in the guy's face saying, like, I did what I had to do in order to stop you. Talking to the vice president, who's now is the president. So then we cut to an early days Question and Blue Beetle story. There's a heroin dealer who Blue Beetle is tied up and questions just like, man, like, you've spent all this money on your big beetle machine here. That could have, like, funded all these poor shelters and whatnot. We could have gotten this sort of guy off the street. And it's like, yeah, but that's not really what we do. We just, like, stop the crimes. And so then Question takes this guy's bag of heroin, shoves it down his throat, overdosing him, and Blue Beetle's like, dude, seriously? What? And he's like, oh, what? It's what we do, right? We just stop the criminals. We're the blunt force instrument. And he tries to come up with a little quippy statement to write on his little question card that he leaves at the scene of the, at this point, murder, but ultimately stopping the criminal. And he comes up with white trash, black outlook. So then we go to Harley as he was a young man. He's sitting at his father's gravestone, and he, like, just stays there constantly. He got beard, his clothes are worn out. And then Captain Adams shows up and says, hey, let me show you the truth. And he shows Harley the algorithm 8. Thus allowing him to see everything all at once, and Harley comes to this realization. And then we cut back one more time to Harley's childhood. This entire time we've known that Harley's father was a comic book artist. There's also been this mention of Yellow Jacket, an original hero that nobody knows what happened to him. So young Harley is going through his father's office looking at his comic book stuff. He comes across a scrapbook filled with Yellow Jacket clippings as well as a gun. In through the window comes Yellow Jacket, the hero. Harley doesn't know who it is. He turns around, shoots the intruder. The guy, Yellow Jacket, falls, and as Harley walks over to see who it is, he unmasks him. We see that it was his father. The comic book artist was Yellow Jacket, was his father. Do I get it? I don't. I have no idea. But regardless, it is so ridiculously dense. I'd have to give it like 2 or 3 more rereads just to be able to figure out what the hell is going on half the time. Most of what I recounted to you was based off of a wiki page because, frankly, I needed help on that one. But boy, was it well done. I'm not going to say it's not talented. It is the art at its highest medium. Bravo to both of them for making this work. I'll give it an 8.5, but that's only because I feel like I'm too stupid to figure out how to give it a 9 or a 9.5. It's so dense, so packed. It is Grant Morrison's answer to Watchmen in a completely different light while also furthering the multiverse stuff. Christ, man, it's something. Green Lantern New Guardians, number 36, written by Justin Jordan, art by Diogenes Neves. This is the next part of the Godhead storyline. Honestly, it doesn't really matter what else has happened in the storyline since then because this is purely focused on Kyle for the most part. We see that last time Kyle was invited by Highfather to come to New Genesis, and this issue picks up with him literally arriving. And they're immediately like, whoa, hold on, this is not our universe. Everything feels different. He's like, you're right, it's not. This is somewhere else in the multiverse. Welcome to New Genesis. And he points out, like, New Genesis is this floating city over the old city of Genesis that was destroyed by war. And he's like, it's a reminder so that we don't mess it up that bad again. Anyway, you have a lot of destructive potential inside you, Kyle. Follow me. And he opens up another portal, and they make their way into this, I don't know, experiment room, whatever you want to call it, with this big machine. And he's like, all right, we're ready. Are you? And Carol's like, seriously, man, are you ready? And he's like, yeah, I have to. I've got this equation in me. It's eating me up. But, like, I don't want to give it up. And she's like, well, are you sure he's the person to give it up to? And he's like, look, I can't get rid of the life equation without also taking your ring. It's a bundled deal. So that's what's going to have to happen. And she's like, I got to do this, Carol. So they share a little romantic moments. And he's saying, I won't risk the universe. I won't risk you. So he puts his hand in the machine, and Highfather's like, I can't guarantee this will be comfortable. And then all of a sudden, the blinding light, he's yelling out in pain. And Highfather's like, yes, yes, at long last, I have the life equation. And he holds the ring in his hand. Kyle falls down, dressed in his civvies. And Carol's like, you good? You cool? I mean, it looks like it worked. You're dressed the way you are. Like, everything should be fine. And Highfather's like, all right, thank you. You no longer have the life equation. And Kyle's like, all right, cool. So, do we get the rest of those rings back, the ones that you stole? And Highfather's like, oh, I'm sorry. You think that you own them? Oh, no. You were a bunch of kids playing with toys that you absolutely should not have had. We're keeping those now. You're not going to get them back. And they're immediately like, whoa, now hold on, wait a minute, we earned our rings. That's a whole thing. We fought for them. And it's just like, look, you guys have done a crap job of protecting the universe. I'm going to save the multiverse. And he then explains the dark side thing, saying like, yeah, dark side exists. He's going to like, completely subjugate everything. It's going to be a whole thing. He uses the phrase orgy of domination, which is a choice. And he's like, but for some reason, your Earth was able to fight him back, which means that's where he's going to come back to, which means I need to set my trap there, which means I'm going to basically take over the Earth. And immediately Kyle's like, no, you can't. Didn't we just talk about the idea of like no one person should have that power? And he's like, well, I'm not a person. I'm a god. So technically. And Carol's just like, all right, you know what? I'm done with this. And she blasts him with the love light. And he's just like, stop it, get it. Jesus, it's in my face. And she's blasting through her power battery. Like she's gotten like just 100% down to 0 in like no time at all. And Highfather manages to like smack through her little defensive fortress. And she's now at 0% battery. And he's like, get your power battery out of the pocket dimension. She's like, I can't. We're not in the same universe anymore. And he's like, Highfather's like, you're right. Maybe I kind of planned it that way, tee-hee. And she's like, oh, you are devious. So he's like, yep, anyway, we're done here. So he opens up a portal, or a boom tube, sends through Kyle and Carol, and they end up popping out in Genesis, old Genesis, the city of ruins down beneath. And Carol's like, okay, so this is less than ideal. We've got problems, and like we're going to have to talk about everything that's happened between us and everything going on outside before, but right now we need to figure out how we can get your ring back from him. And they look up and they see the floating city above, and it's like, well, at least it didn't teleport us into like some other random ass universe. That would have been a problem. So Carol's on his side as well, ready to go, and they start doing whatever they're going to do. Highfather then meets up with someone else. I'm sure she has a name, and she's like, we're going to run a test to make sure that this works better than the last planet. We've selected a planet called Moose, which apparently is just a crap planet that's like never been able, it's like warlike. It's perfect to see if it's going to work out. And so if Highfather shows up on the planet saying like, hello everyone, you have been selected, do not resist, and I will make you strong. And he blasts the white light, and we see that it recreates the entire race of this planet to all be willing subjects of Highfather, and they're all kneeling before him, and he's like, yes, it worked, great. So then the only other thing that relates it all back to what's going on with the rest of the event is that everyone else has been moved, save for Hal Jordan, into the antimatter universe, including the Guardians and Sinestro. They're on the planet Quard, and Sinestro's like, all right, I'm done with waiting. We're going to go out there. We're going to take care of stuff. And the Guardian's like, well, hold on. The white ring has entered our universe again. It is within our reach. It's probably Kyle. And Sinestro's like, cool. Tell Raynor to get his ass over here. And the Guardians go and fly off, and they're like, okay, we can't tell Sinestro that, but he doesn't have the ring. Highfather has the ring. We've already lost. This sucks. So, yeah, it's a decent issue. I mean, I don't have any major issues with it. It's definitely keeping to itself over on the side, whereas everything else is continuing forward, but I'm sure we'll cross over soon enough. It's a little bit short. It doesn't have a lot going for it. It's mainly just pages of Highfather just being like, thank you for the ring, goodbye. So, I don't know. I guess I give it like a 7. It's a low 7, but it's a 7 nonetheless. So take that for what you will. Otherwise, we will check in next time. I believe it's going to be over in Red Lanterns for the next part of this event. Batman and Robin number 36, written by Peter Tomasi and Patrick Gleason. Last issue, the whole Bat family went through the portal, and Cyborg as well, and then Batman was just beating up a bunch of people. I think he got his way to Glorious Godfrey and just started wailing on him. So Godfrey, at this point, is being threatened by Batman. He's just like, oh yeah, Calabac, he's the one who did it. He's the son of Darkseid. He's totally behind all this. I can take you to him. And Batman's like, nah, I'm good, and just slaps him against the wall, knocks him unconscious. We see him apparently hallucinating to some extent, and his computer says he has some like foreign bacteria in his system, but he's just like, whatever, just don't tell me about it anymore. Shut off the audio. I'm going to keep doing this thing. So the rest of the Bat family and Cyborg and Titus were approached by cannibals on Apocalypse, and they're all like, hey, you're food. Please don't make us fight you, because we will fight you to get food. And everyone's like, Okay, that's a problem. So they start launching into the fight. Everyone's going after each other. They start taking him out pretty quickly, and then eventually they all get behind Cyborg, who blasts a big hole through him. And they just, like, one of their dogs gets fried by Cyborg's blast. Not Titus, like one of the Apocalypse dogs. And they're like, okay, we got food. Never mind, we're good. So they're like, all right, let's go find Batman. Meanwhile, Kalibak is saying, hey, get the Chaos Cannon ready. I want to fire it at another planet. The first one we fired it at didn't have any people on it. So I need one that has people on it. Get us some other place that's going to do it. And then they're like, hey, Kalibak, we got a trespasser who's causing some problems. So Kalibak's like, I don't care. Just take whatever you need to take him out. It's one dude. And then we see this giant warship they send to take out Batman, and he just slices right through it, no problem. It goes down in a fiery blaze of glory. And he's just flying his way directly where Kalibak has his Chaos Cannon at. And he lands in the middle of an army of parademons. And he's like, you want to send an army against me? Good, it's a fair fight. And he launches, as far as I can tell, a swarm of batarangs that go out and start taking out the parademons. And they're just like, oh, you want to know who I am? You want to know who you're facing against? I'm Batman. And so he goes in and he just starts tearing stuff apart. Like, no problem whatsoever. But eventually, a bunch of people get some ropes around Batman. Like, it takes all of them, but they manage to get some ropes around his suit. And they're like, oh, tell Kalibak, we got this guy. So we cut back over to Cyborg and them, and they're coming across Batman. They see what happened with the ropes. He's already pulled them off, and he's just wailing these guys around helicopter style over his head. And they're just like, all right, fair enough. But he's still hallucinating. He's seeing, like, Roz, the heretic, Talia, and he's like, bloodlust, da-da-da. And as he's going to attack, the Bat family comes in. They hold out their little Robin logos, and they're like, hey, we're here to help you. We're on your side. You need to show mercy and all that. Like, don't go down this dark path. And he's like, I wasn't killing them. I was maiming them, but I wasn't killing them. They're fine. It's whatever. And hey, Cyborg, good to see you too. And he's like, I don't want to be here, man. Just let's get this over with. So he says, look, everything I've been doing has been for the goal of getting Darkseid's attention. That's the only way this is going to work, is if I actually get Darkseid's attention. It's all been strategic. So they see that the cannon's charging, getting ready to be fired at another planet again, and it's just like, all right, cool, let's go for it. And Batman calls him out saying, like, hey, I like your Robin outfits. And Red Hood's like, thanks, it was my idea. And Tim Drake's like, no, it wasn't. Shut up, man. So they go to where Kalibak has the cannon. And Kalibak's like, haha, load the cannon up, and we will re-nourish Apocalypse with all the lives that we take. And then immediately they come in. Batman's just like, where's my son? Tim Drake's already got eyes on him. He's like, oh, he's down here at the base of the cannon. So then Cyborg takes the cannon and destroys it, just rips it right off its axis. Kalibak's like, I'm going to kill you guys. You have no idea how long that took. And as he's swinging at Batman, Batman's like, all right, well, enough of that. And he takes Kalibak's scepter, blasts him with it, sends him flying across the room, and he's like, all right, that's done now. So Cyborg tries to hack into the cannon. It does something to shock him and stop him before he can do anything. And then standing behind Bruce is the shadowy figure of Darkseid, and Bruce says, about time you showed up. It's a quick issue. It's very fast-paced. It's very much a run-and-gun sort of thing, but it works for what it is here. And honestly, I think we only get like another issue or two. Obviously, we have the Robin Rises Alpha in the middle in order to get Damian back to life. But yeah, no, it's a solid story being told. So I'm going to say this one is a 7. I don't know. It is a bit too fast that I didn't feel like I really got a lot out of it. But it has its moments. It has little tiny bits where it's like, okay, that's good. So yeah, 7 for this, and we'll see where we go from here. Batwoman number 36, written by Marc Andreyko, art by Jeanty. Last issue was a flash forward into the future of crazy ass space stuff happening with the Batwoman team we know nothing about, and the title of this story is How the Hell Did We Get Here? So it's backdating it. So we go to Gotham, where we're simultaneously getting some people who are vandalizing a billboard and a cult that is sacrificing a young woman to something. She's wearing a medallion around her neck, and as the vandals are hitting a billboard, it turns out it's actually a prom proposal, and just like, oh man, I hope she likes this. But then Batwoman jumps in just like, oh, vandalism's a crime punishable by death. And she's speaking with these weird speech bubbles. She's very clearly not herself. As we see, the cult simultaneously is going full Indiana Jones, turning into dust. Everyone is dead except for one dude who goes and picks up the medallion that the woman was wearing. And he runs to a payphone, says, oh, I'd like to report a lot of deaths. There's huge amounts, all dead in this area. And he runs off before giving any more details. So we see the Batwoman is like attacking these guys. They are like, oh my God, sorry, we didn't mean anything by it. Oh God, Jesus. And she's just like, I am going to kill you. You are going to die for this. And then all of a sudden, as they start throwing out like Lord's prayers, she just starts like, wait, hold on, what's happening? How did I even get here? And we see some cop cars showing up, and she's like, all right, I don't know what just happened, but I got to get out of here. So she goes off into Gotham. She comes across the crime scene of all the dusted bodies, and she starts investigating it as police are moving around. And then all of a sudden, in walks Detective Sawyer, who is now captain, and she's basically saying like, hey, how's it going, Detective Sawyer? And she's like, that's captain to you. How about you and me just step over here for a moment? And immediately that one's like, so how's your kid? And she's like, nah, we're not doing that. Not here. And then all of a sudden, one of the bodies is burnt to a crisp, but is still breathing. So immediately Sawyer calls for an ambulance and tells Batwoman, get out of here. Stop contaminating my scene. I don't want you here. And Batwoman's like, all right, well, that sucks. So we go to the hospital where this guy arrives, and immediately he's brought into the ICU, and he's brought before a Dr. Blood. And the patient wakes up and says, oh, we must bring her back, must bring her back. And he grabs hold of Blood's arm, and all of a sudden, Dr. Blood starts remembering all this stuff about the demon Etrigan and his adventures as he fought alongside and all this other crazy stuff. And he comes to, and he's just like, okay, all right, patient's crashing, we need to intubate, let's get this dealt with now. As the patient's like, oh, it's you, you are, So we then go to Kate's penthouse. She's getting a knock on the door, and when she answers, it is, I'm blanking on her name, actually. I think it's Natalia? Natalia is the real name, but it's the vampire lady, whatever her name is. And she's like, hey, I thought we could go out on a date. I got this restaurant reservation that's super hard to get. And she's like, oh, I don't know. I just ordered takeout. And Natalia's like, are you embarrassed to be seen with me? That is so adorable. I've never had anyone not treat me like arm candy before. But like, seriously though, these reservations were hard to get. Let's get going. And Kate's just like umming and ahhing her way through. She's not sure what's going on, but she can't say no to Natalia. So she's like, yeah, you know, opposites attract and all that. So she drags Kate out the door. They start making their way down the street. Natalia's being all lovey-dovey on her. And then all of a sudden, this dog approaches. Natalia's not happy about that, but it turns out it belongs to Dr. Huss, a.k.a. Kate's therapist, who apparently she's not been to see in several weeks at this point. And he's like, hey, you know, it's always good to be able to talk if you need to talk about anything. And Natalia jumps in like, oh, she's happy. Don't worry about her. She's happy. She doesn't need to talk to a therapist anymore. And he's like, yeah, I can tell, what with her whole shifting nervously behind you. Anyway, Kate, you got my number. You can call whenever. And Natalia's like, man, that guy sucked, right? And she's like, no, he's nice. He was good to me. And he's like, yeah, totally, whatever. Anyway, let's get going to dinner. And she plants a big kiss on her. So we go to a pawn shop or something similar to it. A guy is evaluating this pendant that the one dude stole from the cult thing. And he's like, this thing is like 500 years old. It's like priceless. I don't know why you come to a pawn shop with this. I don't even have enough money to pay for this. But like, if you really wanted to get rid of it as badly as you see him, $750. And he's like, sold. And he's antsy. He's anxious. He takes the money. He bolts. And he's just like, the guy who picks it up is just like, oh God, this is going to bite me in the ass, isn't it? So then we go to Gotham Airport, where a young woman, very clearly Beth, Kate's sister, comes off of an airplane, and she hops into a car, and someone's like, oh, is there any luggage, anything you take with you? And she's like, no, just me. Everything I need is still in Gotham. So Kate is at her vanity, just looking at herself. She takes a Band-Aid off of her neck and sees 2 puncture holes on it. And all of a sudden she has a flash to herself covered in blood, making out with Natalia. And she's like, whoa, hold on, what was that? I don't remember that happening. So, last few pages we get are Dr. Blood leaving the hospital. He's convinced that he's just sleep deprived, he's hallucinating stuff, or maybe a brain tumor, who knows. But he makes his way back home, hops in the shower, and as he's about to fall asleep in the shower, all of a sudden there's a crash noise outside. He gets out, tries to be threatening, like, oh, I know Kung Fu, and he slips on the shower drain, and as he looks up, he sees the demon Etrigan, and both of them seem to be shocked to see each other. They're both like, you, and that's where we leave off. So, all right, I mean, it's a chapter, it's doing something. It's definitely setting up a lot of mystery stuff, and that's fine, you know, for a first chapter, even though last issue was technically the first issue in the chapter. But I don't know. That last issue set me on such a bad, like, oh, and now we're going to do 6 issues of how did we get to this crazy situation? And I don't know. There was so much out of the last arc that disappointed, and then going into this one, it's already been an issue. I'm a little bit iffy on Batwoman right now. Hopefully he can do something to really gain me back, but introducing an entire cadre of side characters, I don't think that's the way it's going to help. So we'll see when we get there. For now, I think I'm going to give this one just a 6. Maybe if we can dive more into the Batwoman being a vampire thing, I could get more out of it, but frankly, it doesn't seem like it's even going to be a major focus. So 6 for now, hopefully improving in the future. Harley Quinn number 12, written by Amanda Conner and Jimmy Palmiotti, art by Chad Hardin and John Timms. So last issue, Power Girl and Harley Quinn teamed up because Power Girl has amnesia, and then they went to a food court and they ran into Sportsmaster and Clock King, and they're ready to fight. Page 1, these two start rushing towards them. Clock King pulls out some sort of crazy teleportation ring that stretches out with Sportsmaster's help. The dynamic duo go through the teleportation ring and they end up on another planet. And this issue is literally all that. It has nothing to do with Sportsmaster or Clock King. So they end up on the planet. There's a bunch of aliens and a giant dog. It seems to be making fun of Inhumans to some extent. And this woman steps up being like, oh, are you part of the circus on your homeworld? What's with all these outfits? And at that point, it's like, oh, homeworld, Power Girl, do you know where you are? And she's like, nope. And the queen stands up and says, oh, I'm Queen Digimon, and I need you to kneel before me. And she's like, oh, hey, we're from planet Earth. We're champions of our galaxy. And she turns to this other human who's there, who's an accountant. And it's just like, hey, is this true? Are these people from your planet? And he's like, yeah, the big one with the boobs is. The smaller one, I don't know, she's not so much. And then all of a sudden, he explodes. Turns out Harley picked up a gun and shot him. This was apparently the Queen's lover who came through the teleportation ring before. And they go through a whole thing of saying how, like, Sportsmaster and Clock King just send random stuff through the teleportation rings, but this one guy ended up there at some point. Power Girl chastises Harley, saying, don't you ever kill again. Seriously, not okay. And she's like, sorry, I didn't even know we loaded. So now the Queen is hunting them down. They start running down the hallway, and Power Girl's like, wait a minute, I'm invulnerable. So she just stands there and tanks all the hits and starts attacking the guys who are attacking them. Harley once again uses the gun, fires off a shot, and it almost hits the giant dog, to which the Queen says, you disturbed my husband. The husband being the giant dog, to which point he sits down on top of Harley and says, oh, I see you are a powerful creature, Power Girl. Oh, let us resolve this problem through talking. And Power Girl's like, okay, could you get off Harley? And he's like, yeah, sure, all right. So at that point, him and the Queen start arguing about the fact that, like, they're in an open marriage, but the Queen wasn't supposed to go interspecies, to which point the dog's just like, you're gross, I hate you, and he eats the Queen. And just like, well, all right, that's that. Anyway, what do you want, Power Girl? And she's like, we just want to go back home. And he's like, well, unfortunately, the teleportation ring's a one-way only thing. And the only other teleportation ring that you would be able to get belongs to Manos, ruler of the Infinity Rings. Yes, it is that. So he says, yeah, he lives on a bunch of floating rocks in space with his kids. You're going to have to go get him. And apparently he has like 45 kids and they all hate him. So he's basically like, okay, but like, what's makes him so evil? And it's like, well, he's going to destroy the universe and everything there is. And she's like, that doesn't seem very forward thinking at all. And it's like, yeah, I don't think he thought out the end game. Wink. So we see that he's like, yeah, I'll give you a map, but in return, when you get back to planet Earth, throw in some bacon cheeseburgers through the ring. Could really use them. So they make their way out to the floating rocks, talking about how weird it is, like this entire situation there. Harley asks Power Girl what the plan is, and she's like, I'm just going to ask him for the rings. I'm not going to, like, this isn't going to be a fight. We're just going to ask nicely and hope he sees that we only want to borrow it just for the one use, and then he can do whatever he wants. And Harley's like, oh, well, I thought we were going to, like, fly out of this ship and blast him with eye lasers and all that stuff. And she's like, no, diplomacy first. And she's like, well, you could seduce him, what, with your cojones? And she's like, no, diplomacy first. So they arrive at the floating rocks, and we see his 45 kids just scattered about on random asteroids. Harley asks which one the bathroom is, and then they come across the main... Sorry, no, before they come across the main asteroid, they come across a guy who stands in their way, which is a giant slice of pizza that has, like, the Thanos-looking chin is the crust. And they're like, oh, you dare enter the realm of Manos. Oh, I can hear everything you say. I am also all-powerful. You are not allowed to enter. And they're just like, okay, well, we need to get in there. So Power Girl gets out of the ship, punches the pizza. He zaps her back, and Harley's like, oh, boy, I sure hope my gun can help me again. And she fires off a shot, and it seemingly explodes the pizza. So they have a brief conversation about how they can hear each other in the vacuum of space. Turns out they can't. They're just reading lips. And they arrive at the home of Manos. And Manos steps out wearing this big frilly pink jacket. And he's like, bring me my cosmic organ, slave. And the slave steps up and leads him over to his cosmic organ, which is an actual, like, piano organ. Turns out there's some planet that wasn't paying him tributes enough, so he presses a key and it blows up. And Power Girl's like, okay, we came here to ask for your help. We just wanted to borrow something and then we'd be out of your hair. And he's like, you want my help? You're going to need to go get me the cosmic cubicle that was stolen from this other planet. And maybe then I'll consider helping you. And Power Girl's like, no, you didn't let me finish. We came here to get your help, but you just killed a planet full of innocent people. So now I'm going to beat you down. And he's like, I'd like to see you try. Children to me. And the children are like, whatever, Dad, we don't want to be involved. And he's like, fine, whatever, I've still got the magic rings. And he holds up his hands, and all of his rings are gone. And Harley's like, oh yeah, these things, they're glowing. What does that mean? And she points her hand forward, and Manos just disintegrates. And immediately Power Girl's like, what did I say about killing? She's like, I didn't know they were loaded. You can't put that on me. That's entirely a hidden thing. So at that point, the kids come up and they're like, hey, you killed our dad. Great, cool. We didn't like him anyway. Give us the rings. We'll split it among each other, and then we'll help you get out of there. Cool? And she's like, yeah, super cool. So they get the teleportation ring. Harley points out the cosmic organ is too dangerous a threat, so Power Girl just blows it up with heat vision. And then they both go through the teleporter. And then one of the kids says, I wonder what their world is like, seemingly following them through. So Harley and Power Girl come out the other side of the teleportation ring. Sportsmaster and Clocking, like, no time has passed for them at all. And they're like, that's weird. That's never happened before. So they send them back through the portal again. And then on their way out, all of a sudden, Power Girl's wearing a wedding outfit holding a martini, and Harley's wearing armor holding a bunch of space alien cats. And they're like, wow, what a crazy 2 weeks that was. So then Sportsmaster and Clocking are like, all right, well, we're just going to have to fight them then. So Power Girl and Harley are ready to fight, and we literally just pick up exactly where we left off before, except now apparently like 3 weeks have passed for Harley and Power Girl. Okay, so there's going to be a miniseries coming out, like, I don't know, 6 months from now that's going to detail what happened between those two panels of them going through and coming out with the wedding stuff. Whatever. That's a thing. Here's the thing. This issue could only ever exist in this book. And again, it works for the humor of this book. But asking me whether or not I liked it is entirely up to, like, the subjectivity of Harley is not your standard book. You know? Like, I can't grade this the same way I'm going to grade Batman. That's entirely unreasonable. So in the Harley scale of, like, okay, it's always going to do this level of humor, it's fine. It's like a 6.5. But, like, if I'm judging this on how I like it compared to all the other comics, it's not doing anything for me. So Yeah, take that as you will. But if I have to put a number to it, for people who enjoy Harley Quinn, 6.5. Red Hood and the Outlaws, number 36, written by Scott Lobdell, art by R.B. Silva. So last issue, Jason went in to fight a bunch of like doomsday cultists, something whatevers, on Venom, and then Starfire burned up Roy Harper as she got upset and like went to fly away. So this issue picks up with Jason being psyched out on Venom. He's almost like beast-like in a lot of ways. He's like, oh my god, this feels great. I love this so much. I look around and I see I'm surrounded by monsters, and I recognize that's just what the drug is doing. These are still people, but like it makes it that much easier to beat the ever-loving hell out of them. So he does so. He goes around beating them all up, and we see, from a real-life perspective, all the people in the room are completely taken care of, totally out of it. No fight left in them. And Jason recognizes that this is some form of Bane's venom. It's like seemingly the same thing, but it's very quickly out of his system. Like as soon as he injects it, it's already out. He's totally back to normal now, and he just collapses down just like, boy, that felt great. Anyway, let me go check on Starfire and Corey, or Starfire and Roy. So he makes his way outside the building. Everything's on fire. He sees that Roy's quiver is separated and is also burned, and he's like, what the hell happened here? I was in there for like, I don't know how long, but not that long. So then we go to the local hospital where Starfire is dropping off the burned and charred body of Arsenal, and she's like, this man needs help. And it's like, okay, well, you need to check in, you need to get like all of his info down. And she just like flares up with a huge amount of fire, and there's like, or we can do that, that's fine, you're good. So then she flies off. She's looking sad as he's rushing to the hospital. And Jason says, yeah, that's all I got from the staff. That's what they told me. And she just flew off. I don't know anything more. And he's telling all this to Oliver Queen still. And he's just like, oh, okay, sorry. What was your name again? I completely lost that. This Starfire sounds like a bitch. And he's like, my name's Jason. You watch the way you're talking about her. And immediately Oliver's just like, he nearly killed Roy. Now, Roy's an idiot for hanging out with you two, but you guys are idiots for, like, not being responsible here. You guys are absolutely off the chain. And just like, yeah, hey, maybe we should talk outside the room, not around Roy. So then we get to Poland at a truck stop where Starfire walks up to two random people, hands them a bunch of what looks like intergalactic credits, and they're just like, all right, well, we're not going to ask questions. So then they let her into this truck, and she is approached by a woman who has the same drug that she took earlier on. And she's like, oh, I don't need to ask what you want. So we go back to Oliver, and Oliver is like making calls. He's just like, hey, I'm going to show you what can be solved by being smart and having some money. And he's just like, I need the best burn tech in the world. I need the best burn ward. We're going to fly this guy there. I need it yesterday, goddammit. And then all of a sudden there's a flash inside of Roy's room. They both bust in, and inside is Essence. Now, if you remember Essence from the beginning of the run, she's kind of like a fling for Jason sort of thing. But here's the crazy part about this popping up of Essence. She shows up, she cures Roy, says, sup, Jason. He says, sup. See you soon. She says no, and then disappears. And that's it. And Oliver's just like, thank you, Jason. I could tell this is your doing. So we see some sort of dream sequence with Starfire with her sister on Tamaran. She's like, oh, this is just like a dream. Thank you so much. And then we cut to seeing her on the bottom of this truck floor where she's, zoning out on the drugs. She's clearly out of it. Some people come in and lock up the back of the truck and say, all right, let's go. Let's get out of here. And as the truck starts pulling away, you see Starfire still stuck in her drug-addled mind state. So she's being abducted to wherever. We then go to New Orleans, where Jason's like, okay, I promised Roy that I would find Corey. Admittedly out of anger, but it still stands. I'm going to go do that. So he takes her one of the spaceships and he flies around and he says, all right, I've got this under control. And he takes off, and we see Roy just muttering, saying oh, bring her home, dude. And Oliver's still sitting in the room like, hey, man, we gotta talk. I'm your last friend in the world now that those two have left. You gotta listen to me now. And Arsenal's like, hey, my friend, I got a pretty good idea where he went. He went to go find the one person on the world who knows more about Starfire than even us. He went to go find Crux, who is also from like the second arc of this book, if not even. Best hits of Scott Lobdell, everybody. We're just bringing it all back. All right. It's fine. No, it's not. It's not good. I don't know why I always say it's fine. Look, I'm not enjoying this book. I think that, like, it's bouncing around. It's doing, like, a mystery aspect with Starfire, but I'm so unengaged, especially because they've given me nothing to be interested in, that, like, why should I care, you know? Add on top of it this extra stuff of, like, oh, no, Starfire's using drugs. Oh, my God, I just realized they're doing the Arsenal as a junkie story, but with Starfire. Oh, God. 4.5. I refuse to go above a 5. I've already peeked ahead at the next issue, and it's literally just the life and times of Roy Harper, so I'm already even less interested. This book is doing no favors for itself. Please stop while you're ahead. Batman Superman number 16, written by Greg Pak, art by Ardian Syaf. So last issue was pretty much the end of the arc, whatever the hell was going on there. This issue picks up, and we are introduced to two guys. One guy is arriving late to a hospital. He's on the phone with a man dressed as Batman, and Batman's just like, oh, you're always keeping me waiting, you're doing whatever. But the guy who shows up, he unzips his suit and says like, hey, I've got this whole new idea, this whole new thing we could do. It's going to be great. And he unzips his hoodie to show the Superman logo. And he's like, trust me, this is a job for Superman. And we see that these two guys are actually going into a children's hospital, a little children's ward, and they're performing for the kids. They're entertaining them dressed as superheroes. And they are absolutely the best people you could possibly imagine. And we see Clark has narration where it's just like, you know, things have always been like really bad recently, but like just one day I started to feel good again. Like everything was doing fine. Sorry, this isn't actually Superman. This is Lois Lane's narration. Just like things were going bad, but I started to feel good again. And like things were going okay. And we see Superman, Supergirl, and Steel are carrying some giant killer whales out of like, I don't know, Gotham Harbor or something, and getting them back out into the ocean. And all the other people are like, oh, see, yeah, they're going to be fine. You did great, Superman. They're free. They're going off now. And then as Superman's watching this, he's got a smile, but all of a sudden he gets like a pit in his stomach, and he's like, something's up, man. And he chalks it up to him as just like not being prepared for happy endings anymore. Turns out, though, the killer whales explode. Their heads literally just explode. And Superman has to act quickly because it's like a seismic charge. He claps his hands to make it so all the blood and guts do not get all over all the people on the boats. And he's like, is everyone all right? And everyone's just freaking out like, oh my God, oh Jesus. And then all of a sudden, Superman hears it just a millisecond too late. He hears some sort of thing whizzing through the air. And it is a shot that manages to hit both Steel, Crypto, and Supergirl all through the chests/neck. And he catches Supergirl out of the air as Steel catches Crypto. And he's like, Crypto's okay, his trachea is crushed, but he's still alive. Supergirl is all right within her own right. Steel's got 4 broken ribs and a punctured lung. And he's like, it's all right, my suit will help keep me alive. Like, I'm fine, everything's totally fine. But like, what just hit us and where did it go? And Superman's like, I don't know, it was too fast for me. And Steel's just like, I'm sorry, too fast for Superman? And then we see the final shot. There was one more shot that went off, and it ended up hitting the guy in the children's ward. And he's like, oh, what the? And he looks down and he sees his chest bleeding. One of the kids is like, what's wrong, Superman? And he's like, nothing. Just got some ketchup on my suit. Superman will be right back. And he steps outside, closes the door behind him, and just collapses on the ground and dies outside the view of the kids. So we're at the morgue, and Lois is trying to get some information about these guys, trying to figure out what happened. Clark is just entering the morgue as well. Again, looking for the same info because they're not the same paper. And she's just like, hey, yeah, they're still conducting the autopsy. And he X-ray vision's in there, and he's like, okay, well, I'm taking a look. I'm doing what I can here. And Lois is like, hey, I've already got the police report. So Clark just yoinks it, pulls it out of her bag, starts reading it, just being like, wait a minute. He was in the kids' ward, and he walked into the adjoining room to collapse. And Lois is like, yeah, I know, right? And the like morgue secretary or whatever's like, what? I don't get it. What's so special about? Why do you walk into the other room? And it's like, so he didn't scare the kids. He was a hero. He was like literally the coolest dude. So Clark takes this super personally. He storms out of the office, and Lois is like, yeah, just wait until Superman finds out who killed this guy. He's going to have words. So we cut over to Gotham, and Batman's meeting up with Clark, and Batman's like, usually Superman says hi. Like, he's pretty much immortal, which gives you the right to do the pleasantries, but not this time. And I'm like, cool, I like it. This is good. But it does worry me. So they go to the children's ward. They start looking for clues and such. They point out that there's no physical damage anywhere but the window, and Superman can't see anything even on molecular level. And one of the kids in the wards goes by, and he's like, Superman, I thought you died. And he's like, no, I'm still here. See, everything's fine. How are you? And he's like, oh, well, I saved your beanbags. You were juggling them earlier. And he's like, oh, thanks. So he starts juggling for the kids. He's doing the thing while Batman's like, hey, Superman, maybe we should get out of here. And then one of the kids is like, Superman, maybe we should get out of here. And Superman's like, that is the best impression I've ever heard. You are awesome. So one of the kids says, yeah, you had ketchup on your shirt earlier. At least that's what you said. But then I also saw a bug right here. And he points to Superman's chest. So at that point, they go and they cross-reference all of Superman's villains, and they're like, okay, someone who can make a guided drone that can punch like a tank, but is the size of a mosquito. We got Lex Luthor, Hector Hammond, we got Cyborg Superman, and Batman's like, no, none of them hate you enough. And it's like, Luthor doesn't hate me enough? And he's like, no, look, someone who hates just you individually, like hates what you stand for, they'll come after you. But this guy hates you enough that he went after some random dude just for wearing your S symbol. Like, that is an extra level of trying to send you a message. And Superman's like, what message? He's like, I don't know. And odds are you won't either, because here's the deal, Superman. You got yourself your own Joker. And Batman pulls up an image of Joker, and he's like, yeah, this is a guy, he's playing a game you're never going to understand. He's remorseless, he doesn't have a code, he's just doing his own thing, and he will break your life down in order to take you out. But like, my Joker is just a dude. Your Joker, he's someone who has access to technology that even Superman can't recognize. He has the potential to kill everyone. So Superman is just freaking out about that for a minute. And he's like, all right, so what do I do? How do you handle your Joker? He's like, find your loved ones, keep an eye on them, and then you can at least mitigate the damage at the very least. So they pull up like screenshots of everybody seeing what they're doing right now. And he's like, but like, you're not going to be able to think of everything. He's going to find a way around. And Batman shows like the Death in the Family thing, Barbara Gordon in a wheelchair, the stuff from Death of the Family. And Batman's like, you know, you're going to maybe start going a little bit crazy, but whatever you do, you don't give up. And when the time comes, you do what you got to do. And Superman's like, do what I got to. Batman, did you kill the Joker? And Batman's like, no. And I keep saying I won't. But you never know what's going to happen, man. So at that point, there's a security breach over the thing. And Batman's like, shut it all down. And it's like, oh, nope, security override. It's staying up. And Batman's like, Superman, fry my computer. Do it now. It's compromised. And Superman's like, wait, hold on. All your live streams of my people I care about, they're still up on the screen. It's no big deal. And Batman's like, those ain't my live streams, bro. That's someone else's stuff. And then there's laughter over the cave surveillance. And he's just like, yep, it's me, the guy you were talking about. You know exactly who I am, and I care. I know exactly who you care about most in this world. So check it out, man. And we get cams on Lex Luthor, on Sam Lane, I believe, and one other last guy or it's a woman. She's a singer. I don't know who she is, but regardless, it's just like, oh, check this out. And Superman goes to fly off saying like, hey, I'll take care of it. But we already see on the cam, Lex Luthor's been hit, the woman's been shot, and Sam Lane is also shot. So Superman is too late. I like it. I think it's clever and smart. And honestly, the way it's written, just like the way Batman just subtly says like, yeah, welcome to the club, man. This sucks. But it's like a thing we have. We have our own Jokers. I really appreciate the way he just lays it out for Superman. And the fear on Superman's face of, oh God, no, I don't want this. So definitely a strong opening. Definitely looking forward to seeing how we can pay this off. I mean, it's going to be a hell of a story to make our way through. I think this one is very solidly an 8. I would only go higher if it kept on the same trajectory. So here's hoping for the best, and I'm looking forward to the rest. Supergirl number 36, written by Kate Perkins and Mike Johnson, art by Emanuela Lupacchino. So Last issue was a thing with Red Hood and like this boy that Supergirl's dating. Doesn't matter here. This issue picks up with Supergirl. She's flying through the sky. She's just reminiscing, saying like, oh yeah, I did the Red Lantern thing, and then Superman Doom happened, and Dr. Shea Veritas got pulled into the Phantom Zone. It's a whole shebang, but now I'm going against the hardest thing of all. And we see that she has taken up a job as a barista in Metropolis, and she's being yelled at because the cappuccino machine is overheating and whatnot, and her boss is like, oh, I told you can't handle that much pressure. And she's like, yeah, you and me both, Jesus. So she then is told to go work on the register while the manager handles the cappuccino machine. And she's like, oh, and this register machine is horribly outdated as well. I could build another one faster than I could type in an order on it. And someone places an order for a decaf coffee, and she's barely even recognizing who it is. And as she looks up, it's Clark. And she's like, Cal. And he's like, Clark. And she's like, Cal, Clark. That's what I meant. Totally. What are you doing here? It's like, I wanted a coffee, but also I had to see my cousin in her first real job. Hey, how's it going? And she's like, yeah, totally. Could I have a 5-minute break, boss? And she's like, 2.5. It's like, all right, fine. So she goes outside to talk to Clark. And it's a long, wordy conversation, but the gist of it boils down to, Kara, you're not being responsible. You need to be training with people who can handle, like, super-level training. You went off and be a Red Lantern, and that's just totally irresponsible. And she's just like, you don't get me, Clark. You don't understand. Like, all this crazy stuff's been going on. Yeah, you turned into Doomsday. Shut up, man. And he's like, hey, I've been thinking that maybe the world doesn't need super people. Maybe we cause more harm than good. Connell, whatever we're calling him at this point, he sacrificed himself on Krypton. Maybe that's like our ultimate goal too, is that we should be sacrificing ourselves for these things and whatnot. But you're the only Kryptonian family I have left. And Kara's told her break is over, and she's like, all right, well, I gotta go. But I hope you find your own answers in life, but leave me to make my own decisions. And he's like, all right, fair enough. So we see her going about the rest of her day. She does laundry. She acts like a normal person, but she's being watched by this random group of people saying like, oh, she's a child, but she has so much power. She's known as Supergirl. Let's see how strong she is. So she's making her way home at night, and we see that because of her super hearing, she can hear Shaban, Silver Banshee's music from across town. And she's like, oh, it reminds me of my old friend. I can't believe I lost her too. And then she's abducted. The light comes out of the sky saying like, Kara Zor-El, are you worthy? And then as she's being abducted, she gets thrown into some super Kryptonian armor with like a visor and everything like that. And it's like, to survive what comes, you will need all this. Prepare yourself. Here we go. Your test begins now. And she appears on this like avatar-looking forest up in the sky, and she starts getting attacked by a invisible enemy from behind. She's like, who's there? Show yourself. And he's like, that would defeat the purpose of the test. So she uses her super senses to be able to hear the heavy breathing of whoever it is that's attacking her, and she manages to get one up. She has to take off her visor in order to fire off heat vision and hits whoever this is. And it's like a wolfman looking guy, and she gets around his neck and just be like, tell me who you are, or else I'm going to throw you down into this forest. Looks like a long way down. And the voice is like, all right, good job. Next part of the test. So now she's on a magma world. She's attacked by this woman who punches her from behind, and the magma apparently burns hot enough to burn even her. So she's like, oh, what's wrong, Supergirl? You don't like the battlefield? And she's like, nah, I don't. Let me try this. And she uses her freeze breath to freeze all the magma, which apparently puts the woman who's punching her off her game, and she's able to land a solid punch to the face. And he's like, all right, next test. So then she comes across Comet, who we have met before over in Action Comics. And he's like, hey, I'm not going to punch you. I'm here to help you. Dodge. And all these meteorites just start bashing around her. She has to weave through the battlefield and just like, seriously, you're going to have to dodge all those and try to catch me. So he starts flying off. She follows suit. Ultimately, she's hit by a bunch of comets, and she's like, all right, all of these seemingly have been testing a specific aspect of my powers, so let's go with the super strength option. And she just starts wailing on the asteroids until there's no more left, and then she manages to grab hold of Comet, and she's like ready to bash his head in, and he's like, well, okay, test over. So then all of a sudden, the danger room shuts down. Turns out it was all just simulations and whatnot. And we meet up with Liz Amata, who is a alien woman saying like, I am the preceptor of the Crucible Academy. And she's like, oh my god, this is a school you guys are doing a superhero school? And it's like, no, not just like a superhero school. Like, the Academy can offer many things, and we only choose the best of the best, and we think you might be of that caliber, Supergirl. It will help you protect the worlds and the space that you call home. Meet Maxima and Savo, and also Comet, who you technically don't know at this point. And they were only using a fraction of their power to fight you. You can learn so much more. And Supergirl's like, yeah, thanks, but I got a job and stuff. I'm doing fine on my own. Don't worry about it. And it's like, are you? Are you, though? Remember how Shea Veritas got pulled into the Phantom Zone? That was kind of your fault, wasn't it? So, behold the Crucible. And they open up a window and show this, like it's orbiting a star or something like that. It looks super cool. And she's like, wow, that is pretty cool. Then we cut to Rome for a final page reveal of Superboy, who is Khan, who sacrificed. It's a whole thing over in Superboy's book after it was canceled. Don't worry about it. But he's alive again, and he's saying, I have been searching the world for like purpose and answers. I've gone all over the highest mountains of Tibet, holy rivers and stuff. Now I'm here in a monastery in Rome, and I'm here to find my own purpose, and hopefully soon. So he's a monk. He's literally dressed as a monk. All right. It's setting up the new arc. I'm fine with it. We also had little hints of this in the Future's End storyline, so it's a good little lead-in off of that. We know where we're going with it. I'm okay with this. It wasn't the greatest issue independently, but it is just set up. It is just getting us there. I'm kind of over Kara just doing the whole, like, wow, look how far I've come. Like, we've done that about 6 times now. She can move forward. We don't have to keep looking back. She can just keep moving forward. And I know that this is prelude to the moving forward part, but we don't even have to do the prelude. Just let her move forward without saying, like, wow, I was a Red Lantern. Remember that? That was crazy. Who greenlit that? So yeah, all in all, I think this one is probably, it's like a flat 7 to me. It's not doing anything amazing yet, but I'm open to it. I'm hoping that maybe someone writing Superboy that is actually going to be able to tell the story separate from all the other stuff Superboy's been having to do might be interesting. So yeah, 7 for this. Superman Wonder Woman number 13, written by Peter Tomasi, art by Doug Mahnke. So, start of a new arc. We have a flashback to the Darkseid incursion 5 years ago, Justice League 1 and all that. And Superman is fighting alongside of Wonder Woman against parademons. And Superman's like, hey, you're strong. And she's like, I know it. And she's like, okay, hey, we need to clear a path to be able to get civilians out of here. Build a buffer so that they're not in the middle of the fight. And she's like, no. And he's like, I'm sorry. You just say no? And she's like, yeah, nah. They can fly. They're going to immediately overwhelm any buffer. We just have to keep on punching them back, and we're not going to let up. And Superman's like, I don't agree with that. And she's like, I could tell that you're not the best fighter. Who'd you train with? And he's like, my dad. It's like, yeah, clearly. So they continue to bicker and argue as Superman's like, hey, protecting the people is the first priority. That's what we need to do. And Wonder Woman's like, no, it's taking out the threat is the first priority. And she sees this dude who's like crippled in the rubble. He's barely doing all right. And she's like, if anyone on Amazon Island were as weak as this, they would be immediately killed. Like, I don't understand your obsession with protecting the weak. Like, that shouldn't the strong be the ones that survive? And he's like, she's just talking to this dude as he's like buried under rubble. And Superman's like, hey, we'll manage. Like, we've managed to do this before. We don't need you to like defend us if that's not what you want to do. Now get out of the way. And he helps the man up, brings him over to some hospital EMTs, and is just like, yeah, hey, the hospital's still standing. We're good. You keep doing the fight, Superman. And Wonder Woman's like, all right, hey, my name is... And Superman just cuts her off, just being like, we do not just sit there and talk to people while they need help. We don't stand by and let them die. And Wonder Woman's like, I wasn't going to let him die. So we then cut to nowadays, and Superman is trying to type something on a typewriter, and he's like, nah, that's not right, that's not right. And he's like, half in his Superman outfit, half wearing normal civvies. And Wonder Woman, who's dressed to go out, is like, come on, man, you said you'd be done in like 10 minutes an hour ago. We got a date tonight. Let's do this. And he spills his coffee on his shirt, so then he has to go clean it off. And basically he's saying, like, yeah, I can type at super speed, but I can't think the words at super speed. Like, I got to be able to, I want to do this right. And she's like, why are you using a typewriter? Like, why, you have computers. Why this old piece of tech? And it's like, first off, it belonged to Ernest Hemingway, and Bruce got it for me. Secondly, I don't know, it makes me feel more connected to the story. So he then says, during Forever Evil, during the Crime Syndicate's takeover, we lost a bunch of people. And Wonder Woman, I swear to God she's smarter than this, goes, lost? As in, we need to go find them? And he's like, no, lost as in they're dead, Diana. We couldn't save them. So at that point, he's basically saying, like, oh, we should be able to do more. We need to do whatever. He talks about how he's writing a story for this woman who was a doctor for 27 years, and she died during all the stuff. So it's a whole thing. But regardless, he finally is just like, all right, let's go out for a date. And so they go out, and they fly over the town, and we then cut to a nuclear power plant. Some guys are unloading trash when all of a sudden there's an explosion. It's a big purple light, and they're just like, oh, are you one of them purple lanterns? And out comes Atomic Skull saying, no, I'm just a regular old Atomic Skull. And he burns these guys alive. And apparently he's got a headset that's allowing him to talk with the person he's teaming up with, Major Disaster, who's making this huge storm surge over the nuclear power plant. And just like, what do you think? Yeah, cool. And he's like, whatever, man. It's rain. Who cares? So he's like, all right, so you just need to get in this building to, like, eat the rods? And he's like, yep, totally. That's all. I just need to feed off that, and then I'll be super powered. So Major Disaster uses his thunder, lightning, but also earthquake to be able to break through the wall. And over in Manhattan, we see Clark has given away 4 cabs in a row to people he thinks needs it more. And Diana is not impressed. She's like, why are we just standing in the rain? This is awful. For the love of God. And he's like, yeah, okay, sorry. So she steps in front of a cab, and it grinds to a halt in front of her. And he's like, I'm off duty. What are you doing? But then all of a sudden that rumbling from the earthquake happens. And immediately they're both like, okay, that's not normal for Manhattan. We got to go check that out. So they run down an alleyway, take off their civvies, and are ready to go. Meanwhile, we see there's like a cyclone or two around the power plant. Atomic Skull's just munching down rods, and Major Disaster's like, hey, we got Superman and Wonder Woman. And he's like, no problem. I'm ready to go. So Superman has to stop a truck that's thrown at them. Meanwhile, Wonder Woman is being pelted by hail. And she's like, you think a little hail is going to take me out? And then a hailstone the size of a truck just takes her out. And she's like, okay. Yeah, maybe that would do it. So she's recovering from being blasted in the ground by that. Meanwhile, Atomic Skull is just blasting Superman with atomic energy. Just like, oh, don't mind my nuke puke. Which is the worst sentence I've ever heard. So yeah, it's wisecracking the whole time. Major Disasters like, oh, anyone to tell you that your hair looks great when it's windblown? So they're all fighting, they're doing whatever, and they manage to actually get Superman and Wonder Woman down for the count. And just like, all right, well, if we finish this up before the rest of the Justice League shows, we should be fine. We'll be able to take care of all this. And Major Disaster starts firing down lightning bolts, just like frying them as best he can, keeping them still. And it's just like, all right, well, we can start getting out of here. The lightning will keep them busy. And they activate some jetpack shoes, start flying away. And then all of a sudden, they are stopped by a new superhero that comes in named Wonder Star. And he says, hello, I'm Wonder Star. If you guys have hurt Superman and Wonder Woman, I'm going to have to kill you. And they're just like, what? So that's the issue. Who is Wonder Star? I don't know. I guess we'll find out. It's a perfectly good issue. There are a couple weird faces. Doug Mahnke always has this thing. I don't know how to describe it. If you've seen his art enough, you know that there's smiles. There's something about when they smile. It just doesn't look right. Not all the time, but some of the time. Beyond that, it's a perfectly good issue. I think it might get a little bit witty at some points, and Diana was played to be an idiot, but I like the way that it's moving. I like the ideas that they're playing with, and it does basically follow on right from where the Superman Wonder Woman series was at before this, so it feels like a pretty natural flow. So I'm going to say this one is I'll give it a 7.5. I think it's definitely worth that. Not quite up at the 8, but I think it's a high-quality book, and it's only going to continue on that trajectory. Justice League number 36, written by Geoff Johns, art by Jason Fabok. So last issue, whole bunch of shenanigans. Someone broke into LexCorp, tried blowing up Lex, blew up a wall, virus got out. And now we open 24 hours later. We see quarantine area. There's $100 bills scattered from a security van just on this road, and a whole bunch of cars are piled up, but the streets are virtually empty. And we see a group of people who are very obviously sick are like, oh, hey, check it out, free cash. So they start scooping up all the money. And there's like, what use is the cash? Like every bank in Metropolis is already deserted. And it's like, we'll scoop up the cash and then we'll get out of town. And they're coughing up lungs, like they're not doing good. And we see Batman has got a lock on them from up on a rooftop. And it's like, oh, I've got 3 males. They've definitely been exposed. We got to get in there. So be prepared for another fight. And it's like, well, hey, this isn't their fault. Let's just remember that before we fight them. He's like, I know it's not their fault. It's Lex Luthor's. Let's go. So Batman goes down, blinds him with the spotlight, and we also see Superman's there as well. Batman's in like a full visor thing where Superman's just floating around. And he's like, you need to leave the money and surrender yourselves. And he's like, whoa, hey, we just found the money. We ain't doing nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with finding money, right? And Superman says, like, you guys are sick. You need to, like, listen to us, come with us, we'll take care of you. And the guy's like, oh, you think we're sick? We've never felt better. And he immediately blasts fire out of his face at Superman. And Batman's like, it seems that he is pyrokinesis. And Superman's like, yeah, thanks, Batman. So he just walks right through the fire, obviously. He manages to use his freeze breath to put the guy out. Tasers are deployed by Batman. And so there's only one guy left. And immediately Superman's like, hey, the air pressure's dropping. I see the air molecules are moving towards him. And it turns out this dude has gravity manipulation that basically is being able to make a black hole in front of him. And it starts sucking up Superman and Batman. It's not super powerful, so they're able to hold down just by themselves. And Superman's like, I need to go get him. Like, I'll be fine. But Batman's like, don't bother. He's already moved into stage 3. And he starts coughing up this black liquid. His black hole just erupts. There's nothing to be done about it. And as he's laying down on the ground, Batman and Superman approach. Batman gets hit in the face with some of this residual energy. And Superman's like, dude, your visor's cracked. And he's like, it's fine. It's cracked, but like the seal's still intact. I'm not subjected to the virus. So the dude is alive, but he's in a coma. He's not okay. So at that point, Batman's like, hey, maybe you should think about getting in a suit because, like, it's infectious disease. And it's like, nah, I'm not human. It's not going to matter. But if you get infected, you will absolutely die. Like, there is no chance for you. You are definitely only human. And it's like, yeah, okay, whatever. So they're talking about Patient Zero that's hiding somewhere in Metropolis, and they got to find him. Meanwhile, we cut over to Lex Luthor, who also is in a containment suit. But we see that Jessica Cruz, Cyborg, Flash, Aquaman, Shazam, and his name is Neutron, he's the guy who actually blew up the place, are all bedridden and not okay. And Lex is like, okay, Flash should be able to burn through this disease in like a couple hours, but for some reason it's still attacking him, so that's weird. As for the rest of them, they all have something that's allowing them to fight off the disease to some extent, but like barely. So at that point, Wonder Woman steps in being like, hey, how long do they have before they die? And Lex is like, I don't know, another 24 hours tops? Like, They're definitely there. I need Patient Zero in order to find a cure. And Wonder Woman's like, hey, Argus is coming down here, Steve Trevor. I need you to tell them everything. You better be goddamn honest, or otherwise I'm going to put the lasso of truth on you. And he's like, hey, I want this to work as much as you do. Like, seriously, whatever. So Argus shows up, and it's like, all right, over 520 people have been infected. They are kept in comas for treatment, but they all are getting like superpowers and stuff. What's going on, Lex? And Lex is like, yeah, okay, here's the deal. I call it the Amazo virus. It's based off the Amazo android. I studied it. I found like what it was able to do technologically. I turned it biological, but I was doing it as a effort to limit superhuman abilities. If this virus is put into a metahuman, it will take away their powers. That's the idea. The government didn't like it, so I put it on ice. But like, regardless, that's the idea. And everyone's like, okay, but everyone out there is getting superpowers. So what happens when a non-meta is hit by it? And it's like, well, theoretically nothing. But the first person it hit, Patient Zero, it must have mutated somehow, which is not only how it became so incredibly pathogenically airborne, but also it's giving non-metas superpowers. So we need to find Patient Zero for me to backtrack a cure to get out to all the normal people. And Steve Trevor's like, okay, well, like, what about Wonder Woman? She's human. Why isn't she affected? And Lex is like, she's a god now. Like, I'm not saying it affects gods. I don't know what to tell you there, buddy. So we then see that Lex is like, okay, yeah, I have the knowledge to save the Justice League, all that stuff. And he also says there are like 3 stages to it. Stage 2 is where they really show their powers, but stage 3 is where they cough up a black liquid and die. So Lex is saying, hey, yeah, they're being infected all over the world now. There are reports coming in all over the place, but Metropolis is still like the center of it. If we can figure it out here, and there's no chance Patient Zero left because we would have found him. Lex talks to Captain Cold. Captain Cold's like, hey, yeah, your sister's safe as well, but like, how's Flash doing? And Lex is like, not good. And he's like, that's a bummer. So, we get a whole thing, them talking about the virus spreading to more cities. We see Lex's sister and all that. But the big thing at the end here is we see a person who is being offered the same job Neutron was offered of killing Lex Luthor. And apparently the price goes to whoever finishes the job first. So Lex is still being under attack. But then also we see Superman and Batman calling in saying, hey, good news and bad news. We found patient 0. And we see this big hulking brute of a man who's like, no, I found you. So Jason Fabok's art's fantastic. Geoff John's writing is also very good. It does feel like this issue is kind of like all right, let's just explain everything, get it all out of the way, and then we can get back to the action. Like, we don't have to worry about any of that other stuff. So it's very much a explanation issue, an expository one, but it's not bad. It does it in an interesting enough way of, we're sharing this with Steve Trevor and blah, blah, blah. So overall, I think this one's probably just like a 7. I don't think it's standing out too much, but like the art is like a full point of that, if not maybe half a point, but it's so good to look at. I have no problems with that at all. So overall, I'll give it a 7, and we'll see what happens next issue. Wonder Woman number 36, written by Meredith Finch, art by David Finch. This is a new creative team. We are done with the Azzarello run, and this one picks up with Wonder Woman talking about water. Like 3 stay pages, she's just like, water. It nourishes, it sustains life, but also floods are a thing. It's sorrowful, but also joy. It's prayer, but also nightmare. Water does a lot of stuff. And we can always direct it and harness it, but ultimately we can never control it. Or can we? And we see some dark figure as a dam bursts, like looking over it. And we see Wonder Woman is in a shower, and she's like, oh, it makes me feel that all my worries and sorrows can be washed away, as she's washing blood off of her after some supposed fight. And she gets out wrapped in a towel. And we hear how there's some towns in Pennsylvania that are suing because their water supply was poisoned. And it's like, yeah, funny. We take this for granted. Like, water's just so essential, but it's just always going to be there, quote unquote. And Cyborg pops over Wonder Woman's laptop saying like, hey, you there, Wonder Woman? We got a situation. She's like, yeah, I'm on my way. So we then cut over to Paradise Island. And the Amazons, after the Azzarello one left off, the big thing that was changed was that there are dudes on the island. They are also the children of Amazons, but they are the boys who were discarded and left with Hephaestus. Now they're living here, and all of the Amazonian women are like, we know what happens when dudes get into a space. They gotta puff out their chests and they try to make themselves all tough, and then they end up subjugating everything around. We don't want that. We're better off without it. Screw this place. And if like 1 or 2 Amazons, specifically one named Dessa, steps up and just like, hey, there are kin. Even if we don't like them, particularly, we have no right to kick them off. And Wonder Woman said we shouldn't. And it's just like, oh yeah, what? We're just gonna let them do whatever. She has absolutely lost herself in man's world, and this old crone-looking one of a Amazonian comes up being like, "Oh, she's the child of that." She specifically uses a word here. I want to find trickster, misogynist Zeus, and just like, yeah, that's it's in her blood. She's always going to be that, not like us, born pure of Amazonians or whatever. So she'll strip away everything that is made us Amazons. She'll make us weak. She'll make us only human. And we cut back over to the Justice League. Sans Lex Luthor. I guess he's just not around at this point. And Cyborg's like, okay, so there was a bunch of thriving villages in this area here, and then all of a sudden something happened. And they say that Thailand and Ecuador were hit the hardest. There's been some catastrophic event, and all of these villages were basically just swallowed up by the earth. All the people inside, everything, gone. The only thing that's left is vegetation. And Wonder Woman looks on, and it's just like, all those people, women, children, they're gone. And Batman's like, okay, so what are we looking for? And Cyborg's just like, I mean, anything. My scanners can't find anything that happened. So, like, any guesses is better than what I've got. Cut to Swamp Thing showing up in Thailand, who's like, all right, I don't know what's going on here, but this is crazy. And then all of a sudden off screen, Wonder Woman just comes in with a flying kick, just like, you monster! How dare you kill all of those people? How can you possibly believe that humans are worth that much less than human life? Have you lost your touch with humanity? And she's just like wrapping her lasso around, throwing punches, doing everything she can. Swamp Thing can't do anything to take her out. And he's just like, what is your problem, lady? It's like, my problem is the senseless annihilations of all these innocents, and my problem is your problem. And as Swamp Thing gets like half his body punched off, he's like, all right, enough. He wraps a vine around her, puts her up in the air, just being like, I'm going to choose not to take this personally because you are going through a lot right now, but this wasn't me. I felt the disturbance in the green. I wanted to check it out, but like, I don't know what's up. And at that point, Aquaman comes through the woods and it's just like, oh, hey, Swamp Thing. It's like, hey, Aquaman, look, we've met before. We're chill. Aquaman's my favorite member of the team. I don't know if he's being sarcastic with that one, but he's like, I will let him know if I find anything, but you watch yourself. And he just fades out and Aquaman's like, oh, okay, what just happened here? So they're flying in a jet and Aquaman's like, bro, you don't mess with Swamp Thing. Swamp Thing is like uber powerful. And she's just like, look, I wanted to catch my enemy by surprise. That's just basic strategy. And Aquaman's like, you didn't even know he was an enemy. And she's like, yeah, and now I know he's not. So we worked out in the end. And he's like, what's going on? Why are you so angry? Like, I've seen you're usually pretty angry, but like, this is like, you usually try to talk first at the very least. And she's just like, wouldn't you be upset if like all those people died? And he's like, no, that's not it. What's really going on? And she's like, okay, fine. I'm stressed. I'm pulled in a million different directions. I'm the god of war. I'm head of the Amazons. I'm a Justice League member. I got my own Wonder Woman book. Like, I got a million things going on here. Clark just finished getting over the Doomsday virus. That was a whole thing. How am I supposed to react to all this? If I focus on any one part of my life, the other parts fall apart. And Aquaman's like, okay, yeah, I get it. Look, I've got my own thing of being pulled apart in a bunch of different directions. We hold ourselves to impossibly high standards, but all that anybody's asking of you is that you do your best. And she's like, well, that's the problem. If I give my best in one section, the rest falls apart. Are you not listening to me here? And he's just like, look, the only person you can't let down is yourself. Just focus on that. So we then cut over. Wonder Woman is arriving on the island. She talks to Dessa, and she's like, hey, do we have like any mutinies? Are they rebelling against me? And she's like, no, not exactly yet. And she's like, all right, cool, great. That's at the very least we have that going on there. I don't want them thinking, that I'm ruining everything. It's like, oh, they think that, but they're not rebelling yet. And she's like, all right, we can talk about that later. First, I need to go visit my mom. And Dessa's like, about that, we should talk about that. And she's like, no, after mom. And she's like, Wonder Woman. And Wonder Woman walks through an archway, comes to where the stone statue of Hippolyta has been since issue 2 of this book. It is crumbled. It is nothing but a puddle on the ground with the face of Hippolyta. And she says, Wonder Woman, your mother, she's dead. So one of the Amazonians has some splaining to do. No, I like this as a first issue. I was a little bit skeptical on those first pages where we just waxed lyrically on the importance of water, but clearly it's going to be playing a role to some extent. My guess, Poseidon, but we'll get there. Everything else about it looks great. David Finch's art's fantastic. I think there's a good voice for Wonder Woman and puts her in this nice position of saying like, yeah, no, I've got a lot on my... I'm in like 5 books. That's more than Wonder Woman's been in decades. For God's sakes, cut me a break. Honestly, you should be talking to Batman about that. Batman's got it figured out. So I'm going to say this one is a 7.5. It's a very solid start to a new run, and I'm looking forward to seeing where it goes. Teen Titans number 4, written by Will Pfeifer, art by Kenneth Rockefort. So last issue left off with Red Robin being attacked by Algorithm and was seemingly out for the count. Also, there's a whole thing of Cassie's mom is being hounded by Wonder Girl lookalike / cult. So we cut back to the Tim Drake stuff, and Algorithm's just like, yes, Tim Drake, you're in for a world of trouble. I'm here. I'm going to take you out, and like, the least of your worries is that you're going to be going to jail for stealing Star Labs' secrets. Oh no, I'm here to kill you. And then Red Robin fires off a electrified batarang into her skull, which is enough to disrupt and reboot her system and just like, okay, I gotta just get out of here, and then I can figure out what to do otherwise, because like, yeah, that one took me off guard. But the doors are open, so clearly she's lost control of the building. So he runs out the room. It shuts behind him. It's just like, all right, I got to find a way to either get out of here or stop her. And as she starts recovering from the batarang. She's like, all right, I just got to reboot. She's talking to Manchester Black over the headset and just being like, all right, as soon as I'm done rebooting, I will get control of the facility and then I'm going to kill him. And Manchester Black's like, whoa, hold on. Who said anything about killing him? It's just like, all right, whatever. I'm back online. I know where he is. He's out in the cubicle farm. I'm going to go out and get him. But then all of a sudden she loses track of him, like instantly. Just like, what? How am I losing to the one that doesn't have any powers? And Manchester Black's like, oh, he's good, but like you're not losing him, all right? He's not defeating you. You just need to control him. If you control him, you control everything. So we see Tim is cutting through a computer. He's trying to find any sort of stuff he can use to get to algorithm. He sees that there is a secret room underneath Star Labs that's been completely sealed off, no entrance, full concrete. And he's like, all right, well, that's going to be interesting. So I got to find a way in there. For right now, though, I should call in reinforcements. So he fires off his little sonar, like secret thing to get the rest of the Teen Titans in. Meanwhile, Bunker, Beast Boy, and Cassie are making their way from a night out on the town. And as they're coming back and the sun going up, we see Cassie's mom is still on her doorstep being followed by this Wonder Girl... What's the word I'm looking for? Gang. That's it. So immediately all the Wonder Girls are like, oh my God, Wonder Girl, we are inspired by you. We want to be just like you. We want to do everything. We didn't even know this was your mom. We thought she was just talking trash about you. But like, you know, now we know she's related to you. We will defend her with our dying breath. And immediately Wonder Girl's like, okay, this is a lot. But then the panic button goes off and all the Teen Titans are like, okay, well, he never presses the panic button. So we got to go deal with this. Mom, go upstairs, get inside, lock the door. These people apparently won't hurt you anymore. You're good. And they just stand there and just like, oh, well, she's in the safest hands. We love you, Wonder Girl. And she's like, oh my God, this is crazy. So we cut back over to Star Labs where Tim Drake is in an elevator. He's waiting to see Algorithm turn the corner. And then he presses the down button. He's like, all right, time to go. And she's like, seriously, an elevator? Like, you want to go down? I'll show you down. And she cuts the cable or whatever the pulley is, starts sending it, rocketing down to the bottom of the chute. And he's like, God, she really lets her emotions get in the way of her. So Tim pops out the top of it, puts in some explosives in the thing, just like, all right, got to time this right. And then he leaps out through the top. And as the elevator hits the bottom of the chute, the explosives go off, and it blows a hole right through that concrete room that he was looking at on the map. And he's like, perfect, genius, God, couldn't have worked better. Let's see about this ultimate weapon thing they got down here. So comes down into the basement, comes across a bunch of huge, oversized guns and all this stuff, and it's just like, all right, well, I'm not quite seeing what I'm supposed to be seeing here. But then Algorithm's already in the room just being like, oh yeah, very clever, you got in here. And she just walks over, grabs the gun that he's holding, crunches it in her hand, and then punches Tim Drake in the face. And she's like, all right, well, let's stop postponing the inevitable. I'm going to kill you now. And that's when Manchester Black pops over saying like, oh, no, my dear. You see, I told you the plan was that you were going to kill him. But in actuality, I'm going to kill you now. You've served your purpose. And she's like, what? But like, I'm the ultimate weapon. I'm like super high tech. I'm on the bleeding edge. I got nanobots. And he's like, right, totally. You do. You've got all that. But like, I don't need you anymore. And she's like, nah, screw this. I'm going to kill that guy. You know what? Screw it. I'm going to kill you first. And he's like, oh, yeah? Well, I'd like to see you try. And she's like, oh, okay, yeah, let's do this. So she's able to teleport because that's just the things you can do. She leaves Tim Drake saying, I'm going to kill you, Manchester. And Manchester Black's like, all right, let me just cue up a few cameras here. And then as she teleports in the room, he's like, oh my God, don't kill me. Don't hurt me. Oh, Jesus, somebody help me in here. And she's like, oh, your time has come, Manchester Black. Oh, you might as well just give up. He's just like, oh, I'm in this room. Please, someone save me. And she's like, wait a minute, hold on. Why are all the cameras on? What's going... Ah, crap. And then in walks Tim Drake with one of those big machine gun things and blasts Algorithm to pieces, actually finally killing her. And Manchester Black's like, oh my God, thank you so much, Red Robin. Thank you. You saved my life. And he explains all of Algorithm's backstory. At least what he says is the backstory is that Star Labs developed her. They wanted to make a powerful AI, but then they got out of Star Labs' control, and then she was coming to kill him as one of her creators or whatnot. And he's just like, Star Labs, we're so secretive and dark and stuff, but I don't think we should do that anymore. I think we should step into the light like you Teen Titans. In fact, what do you say we team up? what do you say we do a whole thing together? And Red Robin's like, I'm sorry, what are you doing a pitch? And he's like, yeah, let's do a superhero team up. And he says, like, yeah, your team of children and whatnot, they're okay, they're fine, but like think of like all that more that we could do with Star Labs. You got all this tech, all this crazy stuff. The future can really come to pass if you just team up with us. Imagine what we could do. And he outstretches his hand to Tim Drake. Meanwhile, we see the rest of the Titans, including Raven, evolve right outside of Star Labs, and just like, all right, so how do we get inside? Like, do we just teleport? Raven, can you just teleport us deeper inside? Should we bust down the door? What's up? And as they're ready to bust down the door, they open up, and out comes Red Robin and Manchester Black. And Red Robin's like, hey, everybody, this is Manchester Black. Definitely not a bad guy. And we got some work to do together. So all of this, all the past 4 issues have been a wildly crazy plot to get Manchester Black to look like he's a good guy, to team up with the Teen Titans. Crazy, I know. But wildly circuitous. Yeah, no, it's a fine issue. It's just fast. It's a very fast pace. It didn't feel like a lot was really happening in that. Sure, we got the reveal on the whole algorithm thing, but like ultimately, what did algorithm do this issue? She just found and lost Tim Drake like 3 times, and then ultimately we got her into the same position that we opened the issue in, and then Manchester Black revealed his plan. So a good like 10 pages of that are kind of like, all right, did we need to do that? But ultimately, you know, that's what they wanted to do for pacing. I'm going to give this one a 6.5. Art's okay. Kenneth Rocafort, you know, strong hits on the individual like characters, but the panel layout, I just can't get over that. It's a bit too weird for me. Beyond that, stories, whatever. We'll see what Manchester Black's going to end up doing. This goes up to issue 7, so I kind of expect the arc to end by then, but you never really know. Yeah, that's all I really got to say. 6.5. Trinity of Sin number 2, written by J.M. DeMatteis, art by Yvel Guichet. So this is the second issue, and after last time where the Trinity, sans question, because he just bounced, he didn't want to be a part of the book, they went up into space and found a giant bird named Nimra, who seems to be a shadow creature. So we see the world is being drowned in shadows. It's a whole big thing coming on. Nimrod's narrating the whole time saying like, oh yes, I will take over the world and whatever. So he opens up, or she, hard to tell honestly, it's a bird. And it's just like, hello, I am Nimra, servant of the shadow, Phantom Stranger Pandora. Sorry that question couldn't be here. And Phantom Stranger's just like, did you kill my friend Terrence 13? And he's like, yes I did. And then immediately he goes off and is just like, I'm gonna hurt you. And Pandora tries to hold him back, but ultimately he's just like, no, I'm done. I'm just up with this. And Nimrod's like, oh, you should be a man of peace now, but you have such bloodlust. I'm surprised, but not really. And when he goes to attack, Nimrod transports both Pandora and Phantom Stranger to the Shadowlands. And they get up, and Nimrod gives the entire explanation of, like, this is Dark Earth. It is like a parallel universe, but not one of the 52. It's its own thing, and it's the shadows of what's left. And like there's always been this battle between the light and the dark, and right now the light is winning, but ultimately this place is still there waiting for its time, just biding its time. So Nimrod introduces the servants, the same one who attacked all 3 of them last issue, and Phantom Stranger's just like, whatever man, I can go like full like kaiju sized spectral form thing, and starts attacking the bunch of them. But apparently the Dark Earth is just an extension of Nimra, who was its last survivor, and as such it is able to control everything from the air they breathe to being able to wipe them from existence. But it doesn't do that. So then Pandora goes into her Super Saiyan form, which strangely looks very different, including like blue skin and a silver outfit instead of being gold and white. I don't know. But she's like, haha, behold, I reflect the light that you reject. And Nimrod's like, bro, we don't reject the light. It has no power here. The shadows consume all. So if Pandora's immediately taken out, she's strangled by a bunch of shadow tentacles and just tossed aside. And Nimrod's like, look, I could straight up murder both of you, but I need you, all 3 of the Trinity of Sin, to resurrect my dead world. And it just waxes poetically saying like, do you know what it's like to be the last of your kind, and like your whole world's destroyed, and I could just wait a couple millennia, hundreds of millennia, for the darkness to overtake the light again, because it is just a constant give and take, but I'm impatient and I want to do it now. So we then come back to Question, who is mourning the loss of Abigail, the woman who he lived with under an assumed identity for a while. And he goes to her grave being like, oh, did you know how much you meant to me? And then all of a sudden, zombie Abigail comes out of her grave and is like, oh, you are terrified to see me, not because I'm a zombie, but because I see into your soul, and you're just the worst, and you've been questioning whether or not you actually gave a damn about me, or if it was something else. Were you just pretending? And she opens up or points out a portal and says, if you go through that portal, you'll find out the truth. And Question's just like, all right, and he just dives right in. So on the other side of the portal is Nimrah, Shadow Realm, all that stuff. And Question's like, did you kill Abigail? And she's like, yep. And he's like, well, you know what I'm going to do to you? He's like, yeah, the same thing I'm doing to Pandora and Phantom Stranger over there. And they're just totally subjected to my whims. So Question's immediately attacked by the three, I don't know what you want to call them, henchmen. But then all of a sudden, somehow, Question manages to escape their grasp, get behind Nimrah, and stab it through the chest with a Spear of Inquest, which was apparently made from a fragment of the Spear of Destiny, and it allows there to pierce both the body and mind and provide answers that the Question is seeking. Like the soul and all your secrets are exposed. So Nimrah just pulls out the thing and just like, okay, yeah, that'd be pretty cool if it weren't for the fact that I am in control of this world. You cannot do anything to me. So Question's like, all right, fair enough. I'm out. And he just starts bolting. He starts running. Nimrah strikes him with like lightning. He falls to the ground and burns. But then Question was just like, hey man, you wanted a challenge. I got a challenge for you. So he starts running. He's heading back to the portal. And Nimrah uses its powers to put Phantom Stranger and Pandora in Question's way, which causes him to hesitate for just a second. And Nimrah's like, I don't know why. Maybe he thought he could save him. Maybe he realized that the Trinity of Sin is all required for this plan. But regardless, Question eventually says, screw them. I'll save the world without him. But that moment of hesitation gave just enough time for Nimrah to close the portal, and Question is unable to escape. So all three of them are teleported back to the Rock of Eternity, where they were judged for their sins to begin with, and now Nimrah has the three artifacts that it will use to open up whatever its major plan is to bring back the Dark Earth. So, using the Spear of Inquest, it slashes the bodies of all three of them, getting their blood. The blood then drips onto Phantom Stranger's silver necklace, and then ostensibly it just throws those two away and then grabs Pandora's box, which is where the real power is. So it chants a spell does something, and then all of a sudden, all over Earth, you see this, up in the sky, this shadow Earth is overcoming and overtaking, and it starts lowering down onto the normal Earth, and we see it consumes it, and then theoretically wipes it clean. The tide of darkness overwhelms the Earth. So the Trinity comes to. Pandora uses some healing ability to get them back on their feet, but ultimately that's it. That's all of her power used up. And as they come out of this cave, they see that the world is distorted and wrong, and everything is empty. There's no trace of life anywhere. And the Phantom Stranger's like, where in God's name are we? And Pandora says, we're on our Earth. This is our world. But God has precious little to do with it. Okay. It's fine. It's another part of this book. Here, I don't know what I really wanted from this. Obviously, it's just going to be a team-up book of, okay, you got these three people who are just awful. But, like, they're only awful in concept because everything they do shows how, like, they're actually decent people. The only one we can get some interest out of here is Question, because he's the only one that's left unexplored in the entire of the DCU. So, I don't know. I don't know what I'm expecting from this book. Ultimately, I think it's only the 6 issues, so whatever we end up getting is going to be it. It's like a 6.5. Oh, yeah, it's not quite good. I think my biggest problem here is the villain. The villain just feels so boring for what these three characters should be. Like, this should be a biblical or godlike thing, and ultimately we get a snake in a spacesuit and a giant bird creature. Like, I don't know. It's just like, oh, and then my Earth was destroyed, and like the Darkness and Light could have some fun with it, but I don't feel like the villain's big enough, or at least it doesn't feel serious enough. So I'll give it a 6.5. Batman Eternal number 33, written by Snyder, Tynion, Fox, Higgins, and Seeley, art by Jason Fabok, whatever it is. So, a little bit of going back context, last issue, one of Batman's caches, weapon caches, blew up and killed a bunch of cops. So this issue picks up immediately at that point. We have Jason Bard on the news basically saying, we don't know why Batman did this. It's maybe retaliatory. We're still looking into stuff, but the curfews are staying in place and we will get to the bottom of this. And we see Julia's talking to Batman through the comms as he's going around the town and like looking over stuff. And she's like, you need to make a statement, man. You got to get PR nightmare on this. And he's like, that's not important. Look, I got 17 caches around the city. Hush has recoded God knows how many of them for his own DNA. We have to figure out how to disable all of them. Like, I need to do it manually. And she's like, look, 17, that's too many. Let me out there. Let me help you out in the field. I am a field agent. My dad can stay back here and check the satellites for Hush, okay? Let me do what I do best. So we go to the top of the GCPD. Bard's having himself a drink as Hush comes up. And he's like, man, you told me to put cops there. You knew they were going to be caught in the blast radius. And Hush is like, yeah, dead bodies sell stories. Like, what do you want me to do here? And Bard just starts drinking. He's like, oh, I never should have. And Hush just grabs him by the hair and be like, excuse me. Maybe you're laboring under the impression here that you have any say in this at all. And he smashes a booze bottle, holds it up in his face. He's like, I was a surgeon once. Imagine what I could do with some alcohol and some sharp glass here. You're going to keep doing this, and you're going to be damn pleased that I allow you to. So you're not done. And he says, like, yeah, right now, Batman's headed to one of the other weapons depots. Send some more men to slow him down. And Bard's like, who? Who could possibly take on Batman? And Hush says, a guy named Gilpatrick in SWAT has been working on something. Go talk to him. So we go to one of the caches, and Batman describes to Julia, who's out there with him, you know, all this crazy technological security stuff. But ultimately what it comes down to is they're going to launch a short-range EMP. It's going to scramble the computers long enough for 1 minute. And that's when they have to get into the locks and activate a security protocol, which will douse everything in extreme hydrochloric acid, melting it all, making it inert. So Julia and Batman have a little bit of a banter about, like, why did you think this was a good idea? Clearly this was going to be used by your villains at some point. And Batman's like, it's for the greater good. Shut up. I don't want to talk about it. So at that point, the GCPD show up in a helicopter. They have a SWAT officer jump out, and Batman's thinking that like shots are about to be taken, but ultimately Batman just gets pushed through a skylight down to the floor below, and we see the SWAT officer is huge and decked out in a bunch of fancy gear. And Batman's like, you must be new here to think you could take on me. So Batman throws some batarangs, they bounce off this guy's SWAT shield, and then the dude ends up firing a, as far as I could tell, acid gun at Batman. He blocks it with his cape, and it just sort of melts the cape away. And Batman's once again like, okay, yeah, I was right. You are new, but you're big and you're slow. So he jumps on top of the guy, cuts the tube for the acid, sprays it onto the dude, and it seems that in this instance, it's more of an adhesive rather than an acid. I don't know. Regardless, he manages to get away. He goes back up top and he's like, Julia, are you all right? But Julia's already taken out two other guys and has already dismantled the security protocols on the cache. And she's like, oh, yeah, you gave me a full minute. That's an eternity. And Batman's like, okay, yeah, don't get cocky. So they say, all right, I'll give you location for the next one. I'm taking another one. Everything should be the same way. Everything's laid out the same. So we're good. And Julia's like, I won't let you down. He's like, I know. So we go to Wayne Enterprises, where Lucius is being told by some legal department, basically saying, like, look, Batman made weapons. They were Wayne approved, Wayne's tech stuff. Like, we need to know our liability here. Batman Incorporated was a thing, but we never agreed to this, or at least we don't think we did. Can we please get some clearance on that? And we need to be sure this was an isolated incident. So Lucius calls up Bruce and is just like, hey, man, I know we had a whole thing, but like this goes beyond the scope of that. Please tell me that the paper is wrong about this. And Bruce is like, yeah, hey, look, sorry, it's it's how it is, man. And he's like, okay, I need to be honest. Have you talked to Batman? Are there going to be more problems here? And Bruce is like, I've talked to him. Situation's under control. You have my word. So we see him taking out another one of the depots, and Alfred's on the line saying, like, all right, there's no police thing where Julie is. There's no police where you are. Haven't seen Hush either. It's a whole thing. But then Alfred starts talking to Batman, being like, look, I don't like the fact my daughter's out there. Yes, she's competent. Yes, she was trained, even more so than any of the Robins when they first started. But, like, she doesn't know Gotham. Gotham sucks. And I don't think she understands how much it's going to beat the crap out of her. And we see as she's working on one of the depot things, she manages to open one up. And the moment she does, out steps Hush, who says, well, hello there. Who are you? And he's got a gun on her. So that was a short-lived career of Julia Pennyworth. No, obviously she'll be fine. But I said this last issue, I'll say it again for this issue. Jason Fabok's art, fantastic. If I know he's not a man who can make a weekly book, but if he could, this would have been the highest selling book of all time. His issues are so great looking. It's a great issue. Besides that, it's pretty basic, but it's just kind of saying, okay, we have the cachet problem, and now we're just showing we're getting rid of Batman's toys. Like, all of this extra gear he's got around town, it's part of a larger plan, and we're getting rid of them right now. And obviously it's for a singular purpose, but it does seem like it is part of a much larger thing where someone's stripping away Batman's gear. And I'm interested to see how that pulls out. The only weird part to me is the SWAT officer. That kind of came out of nowhere and resulted in nothing. So curious if that'll come back up at some point. But as it stands now, I think this one's a solid... I'm almost wanting to say 8. And I think I'm going to. So 8 out of 10 for this one. Very good. Future's End number 29, written by Azrael Lemire, Jurgens and Giffen, art by Patrick Zurcher. So, this issue picks up with Ronnie and not Tim Drake, Cal Kakarin or whatever, punching their way around Columbia University because for some reason there's a bunch of Cadmus security agents around, which Ronnie is confused by, but Tim points out means they got something to hide. Madison must be here. Let's see if we can get inside. And Ronnie's like, oh yeah, we gotta kick some ass. And Tim's thinking about it. He's like, I've met him before. He doesn't know that we've met because he doesn't know I'm Red Robin, but like, I know he's Firestorm. We've met before. So like, I'm considering telling him that. So some more security agents come up. One of them mentions how Deathstroke is going to have their heads if they don't beat these two these two young adults. And they just launch in and immediately take out the rest of the guards. And that's where, Tim is finally like, oh, it's nice to see what you can do without your nuclear powers. And Ronnie's like, oh, what makes you say that? And Tim's like, bro, I asked you to be part of the Teen Titans and you said no. Maybe remember that? And he's like, what? Wait, and he's like, yeah, we'll deal with it later. Anyway, let's go. So we see it's Firestorm and Red Robin teaming up, and Tim is talking about how Madison Payne, love of my life, they're definitely going to pay whoever took her. So we then see Jason, who is inside the building, talking to some security guards. And the guards are like, Mr. Yamazaki said that you are absolutely not allowed inside because you're going to mess stuff up. And that's why your security's been revoked. And Jason's just like, why are you guys even here? Why is there security? It's a lab, bro. What are you doing? And like, you guys got guns. You're like military. What is going on here? But Jason eventually is like, all right, you know what? He has to be stopped. This could be catastrophic. He grabs one of their key cards, runs towards the door. The other one pulls out a gun, but they can't risk taking the shot without breaking the seal to the door, to which Jason points out, like, oh, well, that means he's already doing his thing, which means I got to get in there now. So he swipes the card, gets inside. Madison is already in the test tube, just like, please, just because my dad committed some crimes, you don't have to kill me. And Yamazaki's like, yeah, whatever, I don't care. So Jason shows up like, what the hell? Doctor, you can't do this. You're going to kill her. And he's like, oh, Firestorm, of course you'd show up. You've been sabotaging me all this time. And Madison's like, Firestorm? What? So we then see the security guard saying, oh, that's the final beeps. Once that door closes behind Jason, no one else is getting in, period, until the experiment's over. To which then Ronnie and Tim run in saying, like, well, that's why we got to get in. Tim tells Ronnie, you go in, you take care of it. I'll take care of all the guards out here. Because now there's like 12 of them. And Ronnie's like, you sure? Man, there's a lot of them. And he's like, go, do it, save her. So he leaps in through the door. It closes, and nobody can get in anymore. And Tim's ready. He's standing outside. He's like, they say no one can get in, but I'm going to make sure these guys can't interfere. And he starts fighting as best he can. But ultimately, it's been 5 years since he has done any sort of training. So he starts getting his ass handed to him and knocked on the ground. Jason inside is looking over the computer and realizing, you're messing this up severely. It's all imbalance. It's going to go wrong. To which Yamazaki's like, of course you would say that. Get out of here. And he hits him in the back of the head with a wrench. At that point, Madison, God bless this woman, she says, and I quote, you say Jason is Firestorm? My God, is there anyone in my whole life who has been honest with me? Priorities, Madison. Let's look at our priorities. Regardless, Yamazaki is increasing power, increasing the timetable, doing what he's got to do. Meanwhile, the guards outside, in an effort to get inside and stop Ronnie and Jason, are planting C4 on the outside, to which Tim manages to then bust out of the entire group of guys trying to beat him up and says, like, oh, there's no way you're getting in unless you kill me first, and that ain't gonna happen. So Madison starts going incorporeal. Something's happening. Something's going wrong. She calls out, says, Cal, I never should have. And Yamazaki's like, oh, that's not supposed to happen. Maybe I did mess something up here. And Ronnie pushes by him saying, like, oh, what are you doing? Sees Jason unconscious and decides, all right, no time like the present. Goes over to where Madison is in the tube and opens it up mid-thing and tries to drag her out. However, because he opened it mid-sequence, bad things start happening. Electricity starts going everywhere. It zaps Ronnie's body, and he's like takes the full force of it. Yamazaki's like, oh, I can still make this work. I can do this. I mean, I'm going to do it. Jason's like, oh, God, Doc, you have gone off the deep end. So Ronnie calls for Jason, says, hey, we can still fix this. We just need Firestorm. So they reach out, go to touch each other, but Ronnie's turning incorporeal, and they cannot touch. And he reaches through, and he's just touching Madison on the shoulder instead because she was behind him. And Ronnie's just like, look, man, it's fine. It's my fault. It never should have come to this. I'm sorry for the mess. And Jason's like, don't say that. We're going to get it figured out. And then Ronnie explodes in a massive energy, blasting back both Jason and Madison. And not only that, blows the door off the place, blows the roof off the place. And out of the explosion comes Firestorm up into the sky, now with the body of Madison Payne, who goes, oh my God! So she starts flying around. She thinks this is a dream or that she's drunk or something like that, and she hears a voice in her head, that of Jason. And Jason says, Ronnie, is that you? What's going on? And then Madison's like, Jason, am I flying? What's happening? And we see that Jason and Madison have successfully merged to become a new version of Firestorm. Meanwhile, back at the place, Tim, who I guess was not caught in the explosion, comes in through the lab, sees the wreckage of it, says like, Ronnie, Madison, anyone? And Ronnie calls out from under some wreckage. He is burned. He is beaten. He is not okay. And he says, oh, it's too late. She was here. I tried to save her, but I could. And he dies. And Tim's like, oh God, not again. He's reliving his past traumas with all the stuff that happened with the Teen Titans. And he looks over and sees the necklace that he gave Madison sitting on the ground. And he's like, all those years cost me my edge. And because of that, I lost Madison. The end. Now, I love that it's all focused on one thing. We spend all that time, we're ducking around. We've got the Deathstrokes plot. We got the Cadmus Island plot. But we take the time to devote one chapter that is nothing except new Firestorm. We take all of the issue to do that. Great. Thank you. It gave it a punch. It made it real. I am so okay with that. Beyond that, I mean, we'll see how the new Firestorm stuff shakes out. Obviously, we've given Tim a little bit of a motive here. I do wonder if he's going to find out that his girlfriend is still alive. That could go either way, honestly, but I think it's a solid issue. I think this is being able to focus on just the one thing and really giving it an emotional punch is something that has been lacking from this since issue 1. So I'm going to say this one is... I'm going to give it a 7.5. It is so close to the 8, but that panel of Madison saying, hasn't anybody been honest with it? Shut up. Shut your goddamn... You are literally phasing out of reality, and you're concerned that Jason is actually a super... Screw you, man. So yeah, 7.5. Hopefully Madison is okay with lies now. Earth 2 World's End number 7, written by Johnson, Wilson, and Bennett, art by literally anyone who can hold a pencil. So, we open up this issue with the 3 remaining Furies, the Pestilence, Death, and War. They are currently at the Arctic, where some kind of Kryptonian fortress once stood, but ever since a fire pit straight up destroyed it, it's basically just a place for the Furies to hang out. And it's like, alright, well, Death feels her baby growing inside, but more importantly, everyone's like, hey, where's Famine? What's going on with Famine? And they realize, oh, wow, she must have fallen to this planet's defenders. We can't feel her presence anymore. So they're like, oh, well, she sucks. We'll just find a new one to replace her from the last member of this planet's species. Anyway, we got to really team up together now, girls, in order to take out this planet. All for one and one for Apocalypse. Here we go. So then we cut over to Desaad, who still has Huntress, and she's basically like, everyone's going to come down and look for me, and they're going to kick your ass. And he's like, oh, I wouldn't be so sure about that, Huntress. You see, they discovered that there's a bunch of Supermen up there, and now they're looking for the real Superman. They don't give a damn about you anymore. And she's like, yeah, I don't buy that. I don't. That doesn't make any sense at all. And he's like, oh, okay, whatever. Point being is that you have a place in Darkseid's army. You will become a new Fury, and we will have you people bowing before you at the blow of your sword. And she's like, I don't use a sword, I use a bow. And also, this the come to the dark side thing? Like, you suck at it. Why would I want to do this? And Desaad like shows off this new armor that he had made for her. Just be like, I mean, you've seen nothing like this, right? This is pretty cool. So he's like, all right, look, regardless, you're going to learn to love Darkseid. He's going to be great. And Huntress is like, would you shut up, man? Look, I'm not going to love Darkseid. I'm not going to do all that. I know your powers can make me do that. You can brainwash me and force me into it. But I'm never going to do it willingly. And Desaad's like, we'll see about that. So, last issue, Val-Zod broke the Miraclo drug that Batman uses to stay in fighting shape. Batman gets super pissed about that, and he slams Val-Zod into the clone tubes of Superman, and they break open and then start immediately lashing out and fighting against our heroes. And even Lois is like, they're alive? What? I thought they were all just dead in there. And it's like, no, they are dead, but they're being controlled via electrical impulses that are like moving their bodies. And it's like, all right, cool. So they're still going to try to kill us. So we get a whole big fight between the two. One is just like basically just the top half, and it just keeps firing off heat vision. Val-Zod pulls Power Girl out of the way, and she's like, Val, thank you. Look, when this is all done, me, you, 67 Chevy, convertible, bucket of ice, some alcohol, we're going to go on the best date ever. But until then, let's kick some ass. So Batman then grabs one of the Superman clones, rips out his implants out of his skull, and just being like, oh, okay, it's just like a electronic interface. All they need is an EMP blast. So he tells a bunch of them, like, come and get me, you damn dogs, and they start dogpiling him, and then he just activates an electrical burst, which takes out most of them. We then go to China, where Green Lantern and Solomon Grundy are meeting up with Sam, the former fiance or boyfriend, whatever, of Alan, but also now the avatar of the White, which is Wind and Air. And he doesn't remember anything about his previous relationship with Alan. And Alan's like, but you were going to propose to me. You got a ring here with a note and everything. And he's like, no, seriously, that ain't me anymore. I don't remember any of that. I'm brought back specifically as an avatar. That's all I am. And Grundy starts laughing, just being like, your boyfriend doesn't remember you. To which Sam is like, well, I recognize he's being a dick, so I'll punish him regardless. And he like blasts Grundy around with some air blasts, saying how he is controlling of all of the winds from the smallest breeze to the strongest maelstrom. He can atomize Grundy, so he better learn his place, or else they're just going to tear apart his body and get a new avatar. And Alan all the while is just like, but like, Sam, like, second chance? Yeah, we're both here. We're both alive. And Sam's like, seriously, dude, I'm not him. There's nothing going on here. So they say that they got to go and get the rest of the avatars. The final phases are beginning. Next, they got to go to the blue, aka water. So then we got Dr. Fate, who came across Jimmy Olsen, who has a mother box. And Dr. Fate says, hold on a minute. And he taps his head to the mother box and says, I seek to be purified of famine's curse. And then I'm just going to say what the book says. The helmet of fate, which is apparently made of similar things to the mother box, has mated and combined with the mother box, making something never recorded before. It heals Jimmy and it heals Dr. Fate. And now there is a procreation of two mother boxes that has transformed Jimmy Olsen from an ordinary boy into a god. Okay? Just accept that. That's happening. So then we go to Constantine, which at this point, over in the Constantine book, this is actually Constantine of Earth 0, who is on Earth 2. He's trying to escape. He says, he makes a spell that says, just take me where people are excited to see me. And he falls through a portal and ends up at the Arkham World Army base. And he's like, all right, well, this doesn't seem right. This isn't Earth 0. And he walks his way into the place, and inside are a bunch of like cloning tubes again, but we don't get to see who's inside of these. And Constantine's like, well, I've had worse friends. Then we go to Apocalypse. The trumpet of the hornblower sounds. The planet has been marked for death, but we don't know whether or not it's Earth or Apocalypse. But the council of Apocalypse are like, all right, well, time to feed is at hand regardless. We see the assault craft with Mr. Miracle and like the World Army heads are flying their way out to Apocalypse, which is just outside the solar system. But then we see, oh god, I'm blanking on his name. The bad one, whatever the dick one that was around Mr. Miracle, or not Mr. Miracle, Mr. Terrific. He's like, hey, bad news, Apocalypse just disappeared. It's no longer outside our solar system. I don't know where it is, but there is boom tube energy appearing next to the moon. And then all of a friggin' sudden, Apocalypse is absorbing the moon. It's literally crashing into our moon. It's here. Oh no. 300,000 miles from Earth. It's ready to go. So, yeah, it is speeding up the timetable a little bit here. I'm sure Apocalypse will be colliding by like end of issue 17 now. Okay. I mean, it's a fine enough. Look, the Dr. Fate stuff's really confusing to me. Everything else is kind of just pretty straightforward of, okay, we all need our relevant MacGuffins. We got to get the Last Fury. We got to get all the avatars for the Parliament. We got to go get Huntress. We got to get some Miracle. Like, everyone's got their own little MacGuffins they're going for, and I'm sure they're all going to combine in at least a somewhat satisfying way. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm also not saying it's good. It's just kind of continuing on the path with very little changes happening issue to issue. Mainly because I think it's stretched a bit too thin across all the different plots. So yeah, I think overall I'm going to give this one a 6.5. Doesn't quite get up to the 7. In fact, you know what? 6. It's not great. I am hoping for more. We're still early in this book cycle. It has a chance, but ultimately it's been lackluster the whole way through. So 6 for this, hoping for more. And that's it. That is all the comics put out by DC Comics this November 19th, 2014. And as I said in the beginning, and I'm saying again here at the end, gonna keep this brief because it's been a long episode. It's late. I'm tired. You're tired. We don't want to do this bit, but I gotta do this bit because you can't just end an episode by saying Earth 2 World's End is okay, I guess. So I'm going to do this a little bit here where I say, hey, what's coming out next week? Well, we got 15 comics, a couple of them actually interesting. We have, in no particular order, Arkham Manor, Catwoman, Superman, Red Lanterns, Aquaman, The Flash, Secret Origins, Deathstroke, Infinity Man, G.I. Zombie, Justice League Dark, our 3 weeklies, which I shouldn't have to tell you that by now, and then a brand new number 1, which is Gotham by Midnight. And for anybody who doesn't know that, it's what happens if Gotham Central is not able to get past editorial in its own right, so instead we throw the Spectre in there. Crazy. I know. Written by Ray Fawkes, though, who had a long run on Constantine, so I expect it to be pretty creepy in its own right. So yeah, all that's happening. Red Lanterns is part of the Godhead event, obviously, and I think that's pretty much all I need to say. Secret Origins will take a little bit longer, so be prepared for yet another long episode next week. It just never ends. But yeah, if you have any comments on any of the comics I talked about this week, last week, any week at all, go ahead and hit me up in the comments down below the YouTube video if you're watching that way, or however it is you can find to leave a comment. I'm sure I'll eventually track it down. We do have specific areas, though, in the multiple social media platforms. We have a Discord, we have a subreddit, we have a Patreon. Links to those are either on the screen or in the description of however it is you're viewing this show, so be sure to check those out. Otherwise, I got nothing else for you. I am a blank slate. I am an empty canvas. I am a voicemail that is full. So go ahead and check us out next week. Be sure to tune in, however it is you listen to your stuff. Give us a 5-star rating or a 2-star rating, as long as the 2-star is the maximum amount of stars you can give in whatever crazy-ass system your podcast app uses. I'm basically saying say good things about me because I'll cry if you don't. Anyway, that's it for me. Thank you very much for watching, listening. Be sure to tune in next week. And always try to remember, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.